Scenes like these, history like this, it could only be Silverstone. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to TRTN's coverage of the VSR v Race Club UK v SimPlay Motorsport's 2 hours of Silverstone. As always, I am Regan Clark. You join us here at the jewel of Britain's motorsport's crown, right here at the birthplace of Formula One, the Grand Prix circuit Silverstone. Founded in 1948 on the grounds of the former RAF Silverstone bomber base by the Royal Automotive Club, Silverstone has captured the hearts and minds of Britain's motorsports fans for over 75 years, the eternal home of the British Grand Prix, as well as a hallmark destination on the calendar for the British Touring Car Championship, British GT, MotoGP and European Le Mans Series. Tonight's special event then is a 3-way league battle, an opportunity for VSR Phoenix, Race Club UK and SimPlay Motorsport to field their finest lineups and do battle under the anvil of GT racing. The board is set and now shortly will be the time to meet its players. As we can see, this is what we're up against: 18 turns and 3.6 miles of FIA Grade 1, finely crafted over 75 years in operation as a racing destination. A fantastic little circuit to be at, the epicenter of Britain's Motorsports Valley as well. 90% of modern Formula One is situated within 80 miles of this circuit, and we'll get on to that a little later on when we've got some talking points coming up. But first off, it's time to meet the leagues. First on is the drivers we're seeing with at the moment on board with the 28 of Chris Davies, who is one of several in the VSR Phoenix lineup. As you can see, several names joining out for that, and the ones in brackets with the R means that they are a reserve. That would be for the case of Ryan Ould, who I'm believing to be on this track at the moment. As of right now, the lineup including Liam Perslow, Declan Anderson, Robert Ogan, Lee Evans, Ian Oates, Mr. Burney, Tyler Vermaat, Chris Davies, who we see on screen at the moment, Tobias Sievert, Cass Van Velzen, Sean McNally, Jonathan Barrett, Alan Alexander, John O'Driscoll and Edward Vickery, with the reserve entry being Ryan Ould. Now, heading elsewhere on the field, we find our other of 3 teams here, Race Club UK, and we're watching on board at the moment with that of Richard Hall in the number 111 BMW. He's alongside Ben Godden, James Burns, Scott Unsworth, Spike Hart, Konstantinos Chitos, Chris Clements, Nick Lamming, Fireblade, Reese Gregory, Ben Foster, Lars Ramensberger, Noor Farger, Michael Adnall, Dermot Griffin, who's signing in for reserve, Lee Watson, Pedro Barros and Chris Leish, who is also a reserve for this round. And heading on to the third and final, last but not least, of our 3 teams in circulation. Let's see if we can catch with one out on track at the moment. We're looking for one of these SimPlay cars here. We see this is Matt Wright in the number 135 Ferrari, just making his way in. These cars will be caught out by their grey and red paint scheme here. You can see the lineup as following: Ian McGowan, Benedict Varga, Will Friedman, Harley Butcher, Matthew Duffin, Richard Betterson, Gav Cherry Moore, Thomas Cardno, Robert Smith, Zen Vitas, and Harley Butcher on that list twice there. I think we forgot to remove them the first time. Rob Smith, Matt Wright, Leroy Donald, Matthias Claes, Michael Harris and Jan Villenbos. We've just seen subscribing in chat there as well has been Kelsey M. Thank you very much. Subscribed with Prime. And there's your 3 teams then. Several drivers from around the world of community sim racing here on console do battle right here at Silverstone. Let's see if we can get a look at the session itinerary for today. And looking into it here, we've got the data to hand. So we're currently coming to you for the last 16 or so minutes of free practice. You joined us with about 20 minutes left to spare. We'll be on to 15 minutes of qualifying coming up, and then 2 whole hours of racing to follow here in Silverstone. It's going to be an exciting one. Let's get a look at the itinerary for drivers' times at the moment. Pedro Barros fastest with Race Club UK, then trailing from him there a VSR, one of 7 car lineup there from 2nd down to 8th, leading that charge for VSR, Tyler Vermaat. We've seen him plenty of time with plenty of different teams, plenty of different cars in plenty of different place. Behind him, John O'Driscoll and Declan Anderson. We've just seen Chris Davies in 5th there, recently up to 6th. Ahead of Evans now is another Nissan GTR, that being Cass Van Velzen, another prolific name here on TRTN. Actually, I believe we've lost a VSR car in that lineup there, as it's now grown, or actually I should say shrunk, down to about 6 vehicles here. Lee Evans in 7th place then on his way to the line in the Nissan, dead level on times there with Cass Van Velzen. Now, for the VSI lineup, one thing that was quite peculiar when looking through the most common picks throughout all of the leagues, for SimPlay and Race Club UK, it's been a pretty obvious one, the McLaren 720S. For VSR Phoenix, however, it's been the titular Nissan GTR. Now, what is there to say of this vehicle that doesn't require much introduction? Well, it is regarded as many by many petrol heads and fans alike as Japan's most iconic sports car, synonymous with Japan's cultural perception to the average petrol head as Ferrari is to Italy or as Ford is to America. Forged in a long career of motorsports as the Skyline GTR, this successor model, introduced in 2018, did not disappoint, and as Nissan left home to tackle the world with the generations of the R35, it took silverware tooth and nail, racking up several wins in Europe, America, and its old stomping grounds of Australia. The GTR continues a surviving legacy of Japanese engineering superiority, and despite capable challenge from Ford, BMW, Ferrari, and McLaren on this grid, history has shown here on TRTN, at least in the scope of ACC, the humble GTR still has cards to play at the table. On the topic of manufacturers as well, let's address the elephant in the room. That's been Ferrari's mainstay performance here. Two of those podium positions coming towards the end of free practice are currently comprised of the Ferrari 296, direct successor to the Ferrari 488. It was a bold decision for Ferrari to move away from what had been a long-standing relationship with the V8 engine that has existed for them in the GT scope as far back as the 360 Scuderia. With the Ferrari 296 being introduced into the fray, it did bring with it many speculation over the history of Ferrari and whether or not it would play a hand in this model, but they opted for efficiency. That V6 engine has the same underpinnings as Ferrari's three-time Le Mans winning 499p hypercar, and in its road-going model, this is no slouch either, north of 800 horsepower from the factory. In today's spec, though, they'll be punching up in and around 550. Here at Silverstone, we've just seen most recently a time for Will Friedman, who's just punched up to second place there with SimPlay Motorsports' number 208 Ford. Where better to divulge conversations over to the next big manufacturer in the ACC field, and that being the Ford Motor Company, one of history's most impactful names, forefathers of the production car, the blue oval that thwarted Ferrari at their own game at Le Mans. This tenacity to excel was likely the same driving force behind a bold decision after a solid surviving legacy with its now legendary GT for its next big endurance racing project to be of the humble Mustang. Of course, the Ford Mustang had history racing for as long as the GT, heralded by the same name largely responsible for the GT's creation, Carroll Shelby. But when push came to shove, the GT would always be Ford's modern-day Grand Touring endurance ambassador for nearly 2 decades at the turn of the millennium, first in the early 2000s, later in the late 2010s with the GT GTE. The 7th generation Ford Mustang represents a surviving history of transatlantic collaboration as Ford of America teamed up with M Sport UK to assemble the engine based off of the 5.4-litre naturally aspirated Coyote motor, and Canada's Multimatic Engineering stepped in to help design the chassis, safety cell and aerodynamic systems. This has made this car quite a lucrative pick, and it was enough so that Ford was able to take 2 victories in this season's IMSA Sports Car Championship with the 7th Gen Mustang in their home race in Detroit, and then over at the epicenter of American motorsports, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, at the 2025 Battle of the Bricks. We've just seen, though, now up to the fastest time comes Tyler Vermack with VSR. We've seen him in many a machine before. We've seen him with McLaren. We've seen him with Ford. We've seen him with Ferrari. We've seen him with Aston Martin. We've seen him with Honda. We've seen him with BMW. Very scarcely can one recall a time we've seen him with AMG. This, of course, the surviving existence of the Mercedes 6.3-litre unit used far back in the SLS, what I would highly regard as one of the best cars Mercedes has ever produced. The AMG GT, like the BMW M4, is taking silverware tooth and nail, and moreover, on that discussion, Declan Anderson, 5th fastest with VSR, heralding the arrival of Bavaria's finest work of automotive witchcraft. BMW stunned the world with the debut of its M4 GT3, a smaller, lighter, more traditionally BMW package away from under half a decade of large V8 juggernauts with the M6 and the M8 GTE. And it wouldn't be long before the M4 began to rack up silverware for its very own wins in Bathurst, Nürburgring and Dubai, among many other endurance locales. Notably in 2025, when its Evo package debuted, it won on arrival at the 24 Hours of Dubai this year alone. The ethos of BMW in the last 25 years exists within the M4, a path laid bare into the next decade with one of the most intimidating sights on any grid today. It's going to be an exciting race here, folks. Not far from the start of 15 minutes of qualifying coming up here in Silverstone. What we can see right now is a whole swarm of vehicles comprising the top 10. Primary examples, though, we're seeing from Mercedes, Ferrari, and Ford on those podium positions. BMW playing second fiddle to the back of that top 5. Nissan inside of the top 10 there, courtesy of Evans and Van Veltzen. And then McLaren just at the back of the top 10 there. Ben Godden with Race Club UK. 10th fastest there, not far off a shout, 200ths to be precise, off of the time set by Lee Evans in the 44. We'll get to understand the drivers and cars of this track in due course, but there is the brass tacks of it all here in free practice. And just before we get on to the scope of qualifying, just under 10 minutes left to go. As a matter of fact, let's get on to the discussion of balance of performance, as one can definitely recall that it's a bit of a far cry to see so many Fords tucked away outside of the top 10. But let's take a look as to why that is. It's the LFM BOP package introduced for this 2-hour endurance race. What we can see is drastic weight reductions for cars like Lexus, Nissan, and Jaguar. Ford, despite losing kilos, and this is a far cry of what we saw on the I think it's not the sim, but it is the pit skill balance of performance that we've seen in many a series throughout console ACC. They'll lose weight for this race, but it comes at the caveat of a 19% air restrictor. What does that mean? It means a restrictor plate's been fitted to the engine. It's stifling airflow by 19%, meaning it's only operating at the best of times at about 81% efficiency. Less power and less top end. Two core tenets that Ford holds very close to them in their dominance of the grid so far here on ACC. This could be a huge tax for them coming into Silverstone, a track with two amply sized straightaway sections perfectly ripe for Ford to get positions up on. Furthest up the order at the moment, Will Friedman. We've seen him plenty of time over at Exclusive Esports. Today he'll race for SimPlay Motorsports in that 208. He's up in 3rd place, currently out on track at the moment on his way out of Chapel Corner. Elsewhere in the discussions of balance of performance, we can also see sizable weight gains for the local teams here. McLaren gaining 14 kilos. Ferrari, however, they'll be gaining 16 kilos as the heaviest in class there, up by 2 kilos over McLaren. BMW gaining 10. Mercedes losing 9. And that's a major talking point, I would say, is going to be Nissan. The primary choice for the VSR endurance team, for VSR Phoenix representative team on this grid. The bulk of them picking that GTR, and there you can see exactly why that has been. It's a more than capable machine, requires a little bit of filing to get it into proper form, but that 30 kilo weight reduction is going to be paying dividends for them coming into this race not far from now. We're still in the fledgling end of free practice, not far from the start of qualifying. Let's take a look around the grid here, seen down towards Stowe Corner. John O'Driscoll in the number 21 car on his way down through Stowe. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with someone just about to start a flying lap here at Silverstone, so we can break down what is one of the most iconic tracks in Great Britain. On board here with Ryan Auld in the number 35 VSR BMW, making his way out of Woodcote Corner. Now we'll start here on the National Pit Straight as opposed to the Grand Prix paddock on the Hamilton Straight, giving turn 1 then one of the most feared corners, as sadly he won't be taking it. So let's go and catch on board with the 208. That'll be Will Friedman of SimPlay Motorsports with Ford on his way out through Luffield down towards Woodcote. So starting that conversation over again. Hopefully we're not done in a second time. You'd be surprised how many times that would have happened. Heading down towards what is going to be turn 1, the most feared corner in all of Silverstone, as we've just seen the fastest time there by Friedman through Copse Corner. Of course, site of one of the biggest crashes in recent memory in Formula 1, the 2021 British Grand Prix. A huge collision between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen sent Verstappen spiralling to the wall with, I believe it was a 51G impact. That was one of the biggest impacts we've seen in the last 10 years in Formula 1. Out through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, then onto the first of our 2 straights here on the national start layout. And this is the Hangar Straight, of course, paying homage to its life as a Royal Air Force installation. This is where the hangars would have been situated, and we'll pick up on what was stored in those hangars in due course. Out through Stowe Corner, here onto the advent of one of the major attacking spots early doors in a race here at Silverstone, down towards Vale and Club. What would normally cap off a lap here, if we were to start from the Grand Prix paddock, is only the beginning and a prelude for the action set to follow here. Out through Club Corner and down through to the Hamilton Straight here. One of the newest named sections, of course, named after 7-time Formula 1 world champion Lewis Hamilton, as we make our way in to Abbey. then through to Farm. Now, this section of the track, what is sometimes also called the Arena section as we head in through Village and the Loop, was introduced at the advent of the 2010s. It's one of the most recent installations to Silverstone, besides the creation of the Hilton Hotel that now runs parallel to the wing on the Hamilton Straight. In through Aintree we go, then onto the Wellington Straight here, and this is what was stored in those hangars. It was the Vickers Wellington Medium Attack Bomber. It was a training and housing facility during the wartime. And ultimately, it is paid homage through these two corners here at Silverstone. Down through Brooklands into Luffield, another major overtaking spot. We've seen drivers get side by side all manner of time here, and that's because intensity will be at its highest towards the end of this race, as these are the final corners, bringing us back down toward the line here. It doesn't look to be an improvement through Woodcock Corner for that of Will Friedman, but as he crosses the line, he'll still hold on to the fastest time of the session. Last lap was a 1:58.635, fastest a 1:58.267. Where does that stack him amongst his contemporaries? Well, ahead of his teammate at the Exclusive Esports team, but today his rival at VSR's endurance team, it puts him 93 thousandths up the road from Tyler Vermack. Pedro Barros in third place there in the 444 Race Club UK, a very last second signing to the Race Club lineup, a Hail Mary solution as it were for Race Club. He's one of two cars to be inside the top 10 at the end of free practice here for the Race Club UK lineup, the other being Chris Clements in 6th place. Now, it's easy to get tunnel visioned in on what is the scope of things inside of that front row, but it would be naive to not consider how close the gaps have been toward the top 5 and then greater onto the scale of the top 10 and top 15. Taking a look here, it's a 18 thousandth of a second gap between 4th and 5th. That's between two VSR cars, John O'Driscoll and Declan Anderson. Then looking further down the line, 49 thousandths of a second separate Harley Butcher from Chris Davies. That's SimPlay from VSR there on the 4th row of this grid. That's going to follow them in towards qualifying if they are to stay at this level of pace. 4 hundredths of a second exactly between Matthew Duffin and Cas van Veltzen as they make their way towards the end of today's session. And then you can see dead level still the two Nissans of VSR, Van Veltzen and Lee Evans in the 44. Looking here, 43 thousandths divide Ben Godden from Robert Smith, not to be confused with Rob Smith, as this was a point that was illustrated to me earlier on. There are two R. Smiths on this field, and now the easiest way to tell them apart, Robert is the one in the Ford, and then Rob Smith is the one in the 105 Nissan. So that's not going to become confusing for us over the course of this broadcast. We were given ample warning by the folks over at Race Club UK. We do have two R. Smiths on this field. Do keep an eye out for that one. Unfortunately, we have. We've just seen recently extending the margins over Friedman is Vermack to put VSR at the fastest towards the end of free practice. Bear in mind, there's still plenty of time left to play for there. Most recently across the line a moment ago went the number 64, Ian McGowan, to 6th fastest ahead of Clements, now forcing the Race Club UK number 15 Ferrari down a peg to 7th place, now staring down the sights of a 4th row start if they are to hold their positions through the coming 15 minutes of qualifying next up. Of course, that'll be 15 minutes of qualifying coming up. And what we're seeing so far is quite a lot of intensity, but they'll have a fraction of the time they've had today. Bear in mind, you join us in the last 20 minutes of free practice. Right now, staring at just about 2 minutes of that. So how time flies when you're having fun. And these drivers have been in this session for upwards of an hour. So a lot of these are very finely crafted, finely honed times there. McGowan, as a matter of fact, now makes one of the closest gaps besides the current default between the two Nissans at VSR, now 11th and 12th, as he puts himself within 3 thousandths of a second to Declan Anderson at the back of that top 5, making his way down the Hamilton straight in towards Abbey. Goes the number 64. Nearest to the line at the moment appears to be the number 14. We'll be catching on board with them in a moment's time. The number 14, according to this chart here, that'll be Scott Unsworth with Race Club down in 38th place, a 43-car grid. Now, there was a lot of fears for us here in the commentary box leading up into this event. Of course, some of you may know of the upper hardware limits for the Xbox Series S. And we're quite astonished here to be seeing anything north of 40 drivers, a huge turnout, 45 drivers expected in all, 43 at the moment, us making the 44th, but of course we won't be competing in the race today. Coming towards the end then of free practice, not far from the line comes the 64 we watched a moment ago with Ian McGowan. Towards the line he goes then. from 6th place, needs 3 thousandths, leapfrogs both 5th and then up to 4th, ahead of John O'Driscoll to 4th place at the end of free practice. These are promising signs so far for SimPlay Motorsports. They don't just have the lone act of the 208, they've also got the following act of the 64. McGowan and Friedman, the aces in the hole for SimPlay's lineup. Pedro Barros and Chris Clements look to be the aces in the hole for that of Race Club UK, but most eyes for VSR will be drawn to Vermack and O'Driscoll, the 2 fastest for their lineup. Let's not count out as well very close margins here between O'Driscoll and Declan Anderson. It's one to consider as well. Do not count out that number 9. We'll talk more on them a little later on. Coming to the line from a moment ago is the number 135 car. That looks to be there, Matt Wright, up to 8th place. So sizable improvements there for SimPlay right at the very end. The Lexus coming to the line from behind them there appeared to be, and by sort of law of deduction there, we can probably go and find the Lexus, and that'll be Bettison in the number 75. Behind him there, you can see one of the Ferraris for Race Club UK. That's the number 11 car. I think we followed on a little earlier on. This is Ben Foster with Race Club 19th towards the end of this session. A single 100th away from Burns in 18th. As it stands then, for Mac from Friedman, Barros, McGowan, O'Driscoll. That's your top 5 towards the end of free practice on the advent of 15 minutes, but a quarter of the time they've had today in practice to make true on these promises. This could be warfare on 3 fronts here, as you can see capable drivers from all 3 leagues. Nearest to the line then comes the number 6. We'll go and catch on board with them. That being Ian Oates. Otherwise, VSR Oatesy, he's been one of 3 acts for Nissan in Season 10 of VSR Phoenix, alongside Lee Evans and Sean McNally, operating under aliases, of course. VSR Oatesy, VSR Grizz, and JDM Shawnee Mac. On his way to the line then comes Oates from 25th for Nissan. Across the line he goes. He'll stay 25th right at the very end of free practice. The 566 coming in hot here. They'll be next toward the line if we can try to intercept them here on what is a monstrously large grid. It is Benedict Varga with Jaguar. Now, it was an exciting sign to see that Jaguar was going to be competing here on what is effectively home soil for them. Of course, for those keen-eyed viewers here on TRTN, you'll remember that we are no stranger to the Emil Frey Racing Jaguar XKG3. We've had a whole series with the folks over at Competizione Performance League dissecting this vehicle for what it's worth, and it was a fantastic little bit of gear for its single make series. Let's see what it can do though on a grid of fully open-ended GT3 choices. Towards the line then, Ben Foster to bring about the end of free practice and onto the advent of 15 minutes of qualifying. Immediate movement from the pit lane there. A lot of movement from SimPlay and from VSR. A swarm of red and greens. A little bit late for the Christmassy colours, I imagine. But oh well, we were originally meant to have this round just before Christmas, but because of some sporadic delays in terms of ACC servers, we were forced to delay a week. Looking on board here, one of the one of the SimPlay Racing Ferraris leading that charge. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with the Ferrari in question. That looks to be Zen Vitus. Now, it's quite funny that we see Zen Vitus once again. Last time we saw Zen Vitus was at the 6 Hours of Silverstone with the Race Vision Motorsports team over on the NLRL Console Endurance Series. So quite a familiar face here competing for SimPlay Motorsports. Of course, we've seen SimPlay Racing, the motorsports offshoot for esports competition. We've seen them compete in the XCL Pro Series, and we saw Ben Rook take the mantle to Lamborghini over the course of the 3 rounds we covered with the folks over on the Xbox Community League. So we've got a little bit of skin in the game here, recognizing some of the names and drivers, but a lot of names still very, very new to us, and I'm sure they'll be etched into the cultural zeitgeist of TRTN towards the end of 2025 here. Of course, the last race of 2025 as we head in towards 2026. We've got I think, if memory serves me correctly, 3 more races coming up this weekend on the advent of 2026. That'll be from High Caliber Community League. It'll be from Competizione Performance League, and then the return of the coveted NLRL Sunday League. As we see here, still a little bit more swerving, trying to get as much heat into the tyres as possible. Zen Vitus playing for keeps here in the number 66 for SimPlay. They'll be the ambassador for the team, the benchmark time in this forthcoming flying lap. Let's see if we can get the onboard cameras from the number 66 as we get going in towards the runnings of things today. The number 66 we're looking out for here. And of course, the menu navigation on ACC is a little bit on the tipsier end. But there we can see Zen Vitus starting their flying lap. We'll stay on board with them throughout this first flying lap here. They make their way down through Copse Corner almost immediately. Now, we'll be paying close attention to the gap between themselves and Ian McGowan, one of the heavy hitters for SimPlay Racing towards the end of free practice. That gap already starting to dwindle. Could be a key indicator that McGowan is already gunning for the fastest time of the session, or at least at the bare minimum, the fastest time among the SimPlay ranks. Out through Chapel Corner, following in their trails, Ian Oates with that. Actually, no, not Ian Oates, sorry, Lee Evans, my mistake, the 44 Nissan of VSR Endurance Team. Will Friedman following from them, and of course a serious heavy hitter towards the end of free practice today was on that front row alongside his exclusive esports teammate turned rival for today's event, Tyler Vermack. Those two, very, very close eye on them towards the end of today's session. 12 minutes left to go. Time is very fickle here in Silverstone. Of course, that whole outlap just cost them about 2.5 minutes thereabouts, depending on how quickly they could get shot of the scene and out onto the track. Making our way down the Hamilton straight in towards Abbey. You can see leveraging every available inch of track there, tucked a little bit into the left to hook it out right for that run. Most cars in Formula 1 can take absolutely flat out. Out through the loop then, in towards Aintree. We've seen many a move occur here and many a controversial moment, let's put it nicely, happen down through Village in the loop throughout many different championships we've covered here over the course of what has been a fantastic year in operations on TRTN in 2025. Down through to Brooklands and Luffield then, as we make our way towards the end of the first of our flying laps here from the number 66, Zen Vitus for SimPlay Motorsport. Heading down towards the line then. This is going to be an exciting one. Where does the 66 rank up then with McGowan on his trails? VSR not far off from them. We see McGowan up to the fastest of 158.725. Now bear in mind, unlike most of our broadcasts, we come into today completely blind. No qualifying data to hand here. Vitus to third. And we saw it was a bit of a fluke lap for Evans in pursuit there, as he now finds himself down in fifth. We see Burns up to fourth. And there we also see that's Robert Smith was momentarily in seventh, now eighth. Declan Anderson third fastest. These times will be flowing in thick and fast here. You see Matthew Duff in fourth place ahead of Zen Vitus. In the number 55, SimPlay already out in arms here, getting as many times onto the chart as possible. VSR's ace in the hole in the early stages of it today, coming from the number 9, Declan Anderson, who's operated under the last 2 seasons under the alias of Indian Goat. We've normally seen that number 9 clad on a Ferrari 296. His ambitious decision to move to BMW has been an interesting one. And speaking of interesting, we see here another driver. Now, we spoke of exclusive esports is Will Friedman and Tyler Vermack, but let's not rule out some of the other big label esports titles in this championship and in this special event today. And that's coming from Euro Titans Endurance. This is Alan Alexander in the number 27 Porsche. And what a fantastic machine. It would feel a little empty to have an endurance grid without the Porsche 911. Of course, 8 generations in now, the most iconic sports car in the world. And number 27, fourth fastest at the moment, not far off a shout of his teammate Declan Anderson. Will Friedman fastest, then McGowan second by nearly half a second. So a very early doors heavy precedent set by the 208. There you can see following in his wake that dark green VSR Mercedes. That's Tyler Vermack. We'll be waiting to see what time he lodges in on his first flying lap here. Trailing his teammate. Both of these drivers, of course, from exclusive esports, but they'll be head to head by looks of things coming out of that practice session times. Let's see what they can do over the course of qualifying. McGowan back up to fastest. Is it so some rebuttal here from Friedman? Yes, but not by enough. And we see Vermack seemingly was going to be onto the times there, but has not yet appeared. Most recent shifts then in that power dynamic introduced that Ian McGowan leads the session by 3 thousandths of a second. We're just at around the halfway mark now. 8.5 minutes left to go in qualifying here in Silverstone, ahead of 2 hours of racing to follow between these 3 leagues. And SimPlay have really shown up expectations after what was a bit of a middle of the road free practice. They had some good times in there. The heavy challenge was coming from that of Friedman, but I am quite delighted to see how quickly McGowan has woken up from out of his slumber. That's 64. Not the first time we've seen McGowan before, if memory does serve. A familiar name, but from somewhere that I can't seem to recall. Alan Alexander third fastest now. Declan Anderson fourth fastest. So it's an all VSR second row. McGowan still fastest in the session with Friedman in pursuit from behind him. You can see there the Mercedes of Tyler Vermack for VSR. Meanwhile, in the discussion of Race Club UK, Burns leads the session at this time. James Burns on his way down through Stowe. At number 420, off by his lonesome here. Only one of two Race Club UK cars. Chris Clements again into the top 10 in the faithful number 15. Just seen there, onto the timing charts goes Chris Davies. Bear in mind, in terms of local champions, you're looking at VSR's one and only multiple-time champion. One in Season 3 and Season 6 of VSR Phoenix. Now, he's not alone in that assertion. Matthew Duffett, a four-time SimPlay racing champion. Ben Godden, a three-time Race Club UK champion. So we've got to see a lot of drivers here go head-to-head on this circuit before. Very rarely do we get so many championships crammed onto one grid, though. That is quite the pleasure indeed. Tyler Vermack, of course, we've spoken of him before. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with the Mercedes before it's too late here. And I believe we might have just spoken a little too soon, because I think... Yes, he has put the third time on the chart there. 68 thousandths. And by looking at it there, 65 thousandths away from Friedman. Vermack, of course, was the Season 3 runner-up in the NLRL Sunday League, was crowned its champion on the track, but then post-race investigation took that off of him. He's looking at potentially sizing up chances in the future, but it is still quite left open as vague. One of his most recent accolades was his win in Bathurst, the 4 hours of Bathurst in the Console Endurance Series, alongside Fabio Farr in the Porsche number 791 for Exclusive Esports, the first Porsche win in the Console Endurance Series. Now today he'll drive by his lonesome with Mercedes, and he's up the road from Declan Anderson, but really it's a league of their own up in that top three at the moment, all separated by less than a tenth of a second. Then comes the discussion further outside, close gaps nearby between Vitus and Davies. We're talking factors of, I believe, looking at it there, 37 thousandths between 5th and 6th place. So very close third row, ultra close front row. A lot to be considered inside of that top 10. It's also been a bit of grim news for Race Club UK. James Burns now forced down in 9th place. Chris Clements down in 12th. But there's the saving grace for it. Pedro Barros up to 8th. And by looking at it there, that's 25 thousandths of a second up the road from Matt Wright in 9th place. And then immediately down to 9th, Harley Butcher in the 355 goes 8th fastest. The 56 nearest to the line at the moment. We'll see where they rank up on the charts here. The 56 across from a moment ago. Looking all the way down the list here, you'll find Fireblade with Race Club UK. They're 36th on today's grid. Bear in mind, 4 drivers yet to have put times on the charts there. That is a curious one. Richard Bettison, John O'Driscoll, Michael Adnell, and Benedict Varga. All yet to have put times with 4 minutes left to go. Are they waiting for a Hail Mary solution? Are they waiting for a one and done, a splash and dash, as it were, one run of this track in the most rugged conditions they can be? Bear in mind, 33 degrees on track, 24 ambient, optimum conditions, no imminent threat of rain at this time. Things are looking to be nice and peachy here in Silverstone, but anyone who's been to the track will know just how quickly that can turn on its head. Will Friedman second fastest. The 156 coming to the line from a moment ago. Let's see if we can catch on with them. 156, Reese Gregory, 37th after that last lap there, trying to catch up to his 2 Race Club compatriots there, and both of them knocked down a peg by most recent time from the number 4 car, I believe there, Konstantinos Chitos in 31st, and then up the road from them was the number 26 car, I believe. Right now, though, SimPlay, heavy cards on the table here. A 1-2 for McGowan and Friedman. Vermack, currently the solution for VSR's endurance division to try and take pole position. The gap so close, yet so far away. We've seen this one all too many times before. Qualifying sessions come down to the 1,000th. Drivers can barely keep up with metrics that finite. Zen Vitus, currently 4th place. Splitting a huge tide there of VSR cars in the timing charts. Vermack in front of him, and then Anderson, Evans, Davies, and Alexander behind him. Recent move there up for 10th place. Now ahead of Barros is Ramensberger in the number 10. Butcher still in 9th place here. He's inside of that top 10. Recent shift in position there for Alan Alexander. Now finds himself on a notable improvement in the 27. 3 minutes left to go then here in Silverstone. The number 6 coming to the line from a moment ago. Let's see if we can catch on board with Ian Oates from 21st on the field. Stays there after that last lap. And both he and Cas van Velzen have found considerable struggle in the Nissan. Despite 30 kilos of weight reduction under balance of performance today, they just can't hack it in most areas of the track. The fastest Nissan on the field at the moment is being driven by Lee Evans. The 44, otherwise known as VSR Grizz, has been one of the sole proprietors of Nissan's presence on the VSR Phoenix grid throughout Season 10. He's been one of its fastest. Of course, the Silver Division champion from back in, looking back toward it, I think it was Season 9, so a long time ago. Makes his way into the pits then. Contempt for 6th place. We've just seen there an advance up to, I think looking at it there was... Never mind, I think we are just seeing things here. Do bear in mind, folks, it has been quite busy for us this week, so we are just sort of seeing things every now and again. 2 minutes left to go then. Anderson across the line, couldn't find a mark up past 5th place though on that last lap. The number 9 maintains position ahead of Evans, but behind Vitus. Friedman joining us in chat there, so you can see Will Friedman already joining us from the Twitch chat. Now we can see him on the paddock there, resting from within the pit lane, beyond the point of no return here. No chances to get one more lap in. He's contempt 0.003 of a second off from pole position at the best of times here, but let's not rule out a potential challenge from his teammate at Exclusive and his rival for today at VSR, that being Tyler Vermaak. He's on his way out of the Hamilton straight in towards Abbey. The 89 Mercedes has been a bit of a challenge, and he said he's been coming into this one relatively blind here. He's had to make his own setups, one that feel a little bit more attuned to his own driving style, and we've seen for Vermaak, he is a man of many machines. He has definitely fiddled around with the idea of trying to find that sweet spot. I think the bulk of the time we've seen from him in the last couple of months has been spent with the Ford Motor Company, so a move over towards Mercedes definitely does rule perhaps a change in priorities in the last couple of weeks, or maybe even the last couple of days out past Christmas for Vermaak. Friedman looking to play the team game then, says from the Twitch chat he's fine with P2, he'll just chill behind his teammate. So he's playing for keeps here with SimPlay, looking potentially to run defense for Ian McGowan ahead of Tyler Vermaak. This could be an exciting one then, playing strategy here, VSR versus SimPlay. Bear in mind, Tyler Vermaak is without any assistance on that second row. Down towards the line he goes then onto his final flying lap. Couldn't find even a smidge over a current improvement. Still 68 thousandths away at the best of times here from Friedman. They've set up a defensive line then on that front row. It's Chesser, not checkers in qualifying, and we'll see exactly how that stacks out. Bear in mind, Zen Vitus has got a world's weight upon his shoulders, a solo act here to try and defend and then attack simultaneously. Defending from Anderson, Alexander, Evans, Van Velzen, who most recently made his way to 8th place, and Davies, and then attempting to attack Tyler Vermaak, which we've seen historically is quite the great challenge. Crossed the line a moment ago, Jan Willem Bos for SimPlay, one of the reserve entries, is now 7th fastest there, splitting the tide once again. SimPlay making a procession up towards VSR, looking to claim a little more territory in that top 10. This is all war games now between these three leagues. Right now, without even a slice of the cake, appears to be Race Club UK. Fastest time from them, Lars Rammensberger, 12th place, and 740 thousandths off of the fastest time. 186 across the line a moment ago. Was that perhaps the 196? No, it was in fact the 186, and that was Gav Cherry Moore. 27th for SimPlay at the end of this session. The 64's coming to the line here, so let's see if we can go and catch on board with Ian McGowan. And he has a little bit of a slip there out through Luffield into the pit lane. He goes, he's happy with what he's been able to do so far. It's pole position by looks of things here for Ian McGowan. Bear in mind, there is still the dark horse of this qualifying session. 68 thousandths is the clearing margin. You need 65 over Friedman, 68 for pole position. Can it be done for the Mercedes of Tyler Vermaak? It's been an ambitious choice. Has it been a gamble worth making for the South African talent? Well, he's out of Luffield in towards Woodcote. Let's see. It's all or nothing now for the 89 and looking to throw the towel then. It was a great hustle, so close, yet so far away. The 55 across the line from behind them there and up to 17th place at the end of that qualifying session is Duffin. Well, an exciting qualifying session indeed, and a lot to pick apart. One of the largest grids we've ever seen here on TRTN upon the advent of 2 hours of racing. We'll get the timer just reset there. I don't know why I had 15 seconds off of it. But as you can see now, 2 hours of racing set to follow. Sadly, no articles of news to discuss for today. So let's discuss some of the heavy hitters for vehicles. Well, let's start things off on that discussion of the front row. McLaren. It was quite something here when they introduced the 720S in 2017, and it took petrol heads by storm. A sleeker, more powerful offering to bridge the gap between McLaren's titular 570S and 650S and their megalith projects like the P1. Shortly thereafter did it find its journey into motorsport, beginning replacing the 650S GT3. Not before long did the 720S prove to be McLaren's most potent endurance racing offering since the F1 GTR of the 1990s. The 720S Evo has come to be a lucrative model both on and off the virtual world. Where the 650S's crowning achievement was a win at the 2016 Bathurst 12-hour, the 720S continues the mantle for endurance prowess and recently won in the 2025 Lone Star Le Mans in the World Endurance Championship. In ACC, it's a dominant figure. Used from grassroots to high-end esports, we here at TRTN would be lost for words to name one time McLaren didn't have a stake on a grid we've covered for GT3. Taking a look at the other heavy hitter on that podium there, Ford. Of course, we mentioned before the history behind the Ford Mustang, a very ambitious choice by Ford. They took 2 wins in the IMSA Sports Car Championship in GTD Pro this year, and it was lucrative enough on 2 podiums the season before to lure Pfaff Motorsports away from McLaren. Ultimately, the Ford Mustang's success in its inaugural year of 2024 was the deciding factor behind why McLaren has very little offerings to give on the American circuit. Let's take a look at what is an extensive grid here. 40 plus cars in all for 2 hours of racing here at Silverstone at the VSR V Race Club UK v SimPlay Motorsport's 2 hours of Silverstone, brought to you by TRTN. Ian McGowan then on pole position to make a SimPlay 1-2 with Will Friedman. In second place, Tyler Vermack tantalizingly close to the chances of a front row start. He'll find himself third place and alongside Zen Vitas, these two having seen Silverstone not too long ago in the recent memory of the 6 hours of Silverstone. They're third and fourth. Declan Anderson in fifth with Alan Alexander in sixth. Pedro Barros fastest for the Race Club UK lineup and puts their one and only car in the top 10. He's seventh, and alongside him on that fourth row, Jan Villenbos with SimPlay Motorsports. Lee Evans in ninth ahead of Cas van Veltzen to round out the top 10, with Chris Davies just outside in 11th place. Rounding out that sixth row, Harley Butcher in 12th place, Lars Rammensberger and Matt Wright in 13th and 14th, Ben Godden and James Burns in 15th and 16th, Matthew Duffin and Michael Harris in 17th and 18th, Mr. Burney in 19th, and Chris Clements to round out the top 20. Bear in mind, that's scratching the surface here. We still have 20 more cars, so let's start raffling these off relatively sharpish here. Robert Smith, Oates, Watson, Hall, Cardno, Oaken, Cherry Moore, Cheetos, McNally, Foster, Gregory, Auld, Rob Smith, so there's the distinction there between the 117 and the 105, Unsworth, Hart, Perslow, Lamming, Blade, Varga, Barrett, O'Driscoll, Betterson and Adnall. That is quite the grid indeed. 43 vehicles in all, several millions of dollars worth of machinery making their way onto the track today, with about a minute before the start of the formation lap and on the advent of 2 hours of racing to follow here in Silverstone. This is going to be a juicy one. Major strategies then being considered at the moment, as it's open-ended for our drivers. They get to piece this one together, so ones that we can try to start to predict right now. Early doors attack strategy for Vermack, early doors defense strategy for Friedman. He already knows his teammate at the former time they've had at Exclusive, but today they wear different costumes, they wear different badges, and they will be fighting for keeps here. We've seen what Friedman can do when pressed up against it, so make no mistake, that 208 and that 89 are going to have a very spicy battle from the start there. We've already seen this, not really a lack of ambition, but contempt from Friedman to play defensively for his teammate Ian McGowan at SimPlay. We'll stay on board with these two. Other fights to consider is going to be all throughout that top 10. That comprises the top quarter of this grid. Now, we've spoken before of a concept known as the danger zone. It's something we've described as the crunch between the front pack slowing down towards turn 1 and the rear pack being more enthusiastic for the run into turn 1. I believe we do have a VSR car there starting from a disconnect, as they have dropped a gap in that right-hand row. Now finds himself down at the back. And that, by looks of it there, is Purslow. We also see having forced to have been start from the pit lane is Lee Watson in the number 13 Race Club UK Mercedes. Perhaps he will then be spared of some of the action to take place on the run down through Copse Corner. Now, it's a daunting corner from the Grand Prix start, let alone is it going to be a daunting corner as turn 1 of racing today here in Silverstone. It's going to be an exciting one to see how these drivers tackle in their initial run, and then we'll be able to see them go absolutely hell for leather in the following lap when they're running at full steam out through Woodcote Corner. Looking from around the field, various views of things here. We can see a small cluster of Race Club UK cars. That's Duffin and Burns, 17th and 16th. Actually, 15th and 16th there as it's been readjusted for that pit lane start for Watson. Behind them there, it's Godden and Burns, I should say. Duffin and Harris are the SimPlay cars behind them. Still learning the whole grid here. I mean, this is quite something to behold, is it not? 42 cars on this grid. One of the largest, if not the largest grids we've ever seen here at Silverstone. 3 leagues in all head-to-head here. And to give you a brief update on the spotters guide for this race, you'll be keeping an eye out for the SimPlay Motorsports cars by their red and silver colour scheme. You'll be looking out for Race Club UK by the monochromatic black and white scheme. And then you'll be looking out for VSR Phoenix with their green, gold and black paint scheme. So let's go and catch back on board then with our leading SimPlay cars, McGowan and Friedman. And they've got strategic advantage right off the bat here. They can play super defensively onto Vermack and force him to burn the tyres out. That's going to make easier leeway for Zen Vitus behind them. They've got quite the solid checkmate right off the bat here. I think one thing they fail to recognise is just how ambitious Vermack can get on the race starts. We've seen it before. We've seen it throughout VSR. We've seen it in the Sunday League. When push comes to shove, he's not one to buckle easily. So this could make for either one of the best starts you've ever seen, or maybe one of the worst if there is to be major contact. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object. Watson starting from the pit lane. I highly doubt it was by any strategy for the number 13 there, but he will be missing out on maybe what could be a whole flurry of action down towards turn 1. With 40 cars in all, it is difficult enough to even squeeze 20 machines onto this track in comfortable space over the course of the British Grand Prix. Working with double those numbers is going to prove to be a challenge for our drivers today. McLaren with a heavy stake in this race as well. Their home race, their headquarters in Woking, Surrey, about 74 miles away from this circuit. Early doors ambition from Tyler Vermack. So we make our way down the Wellington Straight, then in towards the run of Brooklands and Luffield. This is going to be exciting, folks. 2 hours of racing to follow here, not far from this point. Evidently something so exciting that even the dogs felt reason to raise alarm. Down towards Luffield Corner then, the 64 just slows down for but a moment to give a little bit of leeway back to the rest of the field. As we begin that formation process, 2 cars abreast there down towards Woodcote. On what I must say is a really glorious sight here. 42 machines in this race, 41 on track, 20 on one side, 21 on the other. Down through Woodcote Corner then, 2 hours of racing set to follow. VSR versus Race Club UK versus SimPlay. 2 hours here at Silverstone. Without further ado then, as we go rolling down towards the line, a 1-2 formation for SimPlay. And without further ado, we are green and racing. 2 hours against the clock and a great start right off the bat from the front row. One thing to keep in mind there is a great start as well by Tyler Vermack. Already looking to get front to rear there with his teammate, Will Friedman. Bear in mind, I say teammate rather figuratively there, as those two will be competing under the anvil of full-scale automotive warfare. Down through Maggots, Beckett and Chapel already breaking away from the masses as we see off in the background one of the SimPlay Racing McLarens forced to cut through Maggots and Beckett's. Oh, off in the background, it's a huge spin there for one of the Ferraris of Race Club UK. It's going to create a maelstrom of steel here. We catch on board. This is Richard Betterson to just get a bit of a scope of what's gone on here. Oh my goodness, this is absolutely disastrous. It is steel on steel, carbon on carbon, millions in damages, and several drivers wiped out on the first stretch. I don't believe I've ever seen anything quite like that. A bit of a step out there for the 44. That gives 420 the rise. James Burns gets position up over Lee Evans. Off in the background there, you can see with significant front-end damage is Matthew Duffin. But what on earth happened in that opening stretch down towards the hangar straight? It was very spicy indeed. Watson versus Barrett. Now, bear in mind, this has actually been pay dirt for Lee Watson. He's already found his way up a few positions. He's up past that first bottom quarter, as it were. Started down in 42nd place and found his way already up towards the scope of the top 30. He's in 30th. Betterson, who we were on board with to just analyze the scope of the damages there with Lexus and SimPlay Motorsports, is in 29th. Let's go and take a look back on board with the drivers in and amongst the top 20. We see here as Davies, one of several drivers with severe damages there, looks to be intercepted by Reese Gregory in the fight for 15th place. He's not going to be putting up too much of a fight. He's got damage to play with. It's open-ended strategy, and with tremendous amounts of understeer, I highly doubt the 28 is longed for the track. He'll be into the pits pronto on his way out through left field. Off he goes then, and we're on board with the 156 now up to 15th place. Looking down the line, we can see another car severely damaged, John O'Driscoll. Another severely damaged car here, Thomas Cardno. He's being intercepted by Scott Unsworth down towards Copse Corner. Could it be contact? No, not this time around. The 7 and the 14, easy breezy there through turn 1 for what is effectively the first actual lap of this race, and it has started with quite the death toll. You can see there the pit lane, it is lively. A lot of cars coming in, and none of them looking all too pretty at this time. Looking back up to the scope of the top 5, and a big stab of oversteer for Tyler Vermack as he exits Stowe Corner. Meanwhile, Zen Vitus drops to 5th as Declan Anderson takes 4th. In and amongst the chaos erupting behind them, things have started to lay in motion amongst the top 10. Right now, it's a 2-horse race. It's SimPlay versus VSR in that top 5. Vermack and Anderson do find themselves flanked on either side there. Temporary buffer between themselves and the rest of that VSR field. Getting a look on board here with one of the Nissans out on track. Cas van Veltzen could be taking a chunk out of the 66 of Zen Vitus. Let's stay on board here with the Flying Dutchman, as he's come to be known here on TRTN, in the fight of 5th. V6 versus V6, and then up the road another 6-cylinder, the inline 6 from Declan Anderson's BMW. Behind them, flat 6, so if you're a big 6-cylinder fan, you'll be screaming down towards Brooklands and Luffield. Very close stuff here. This could actually elevate itself to a fight of 4th place for Van Veltzen. As you can see up the road, and starting to lose a little bit of steam ahead of Zen Vitus is Declan Anderson. He's not able to keep pace at the moment with the ongoing fight for 2nd. That's between, by looks of things, there, Freeman and Vermack. Down through Copse Corners, where the Nissan draws away just a little bit of time here. I must say it has been a remarkable start for Cas van Veltzen. But things were looking a little lackluster through free practice. He was still sort of ironing out the creases. A lot of teething issues for him in his move to Nissan, but he's quickly caught on to the various kinks of this vehicle and is now working rather effectively. On the exit of Chapel, hanging loose there from the back end of the 66. He is not looking to make anything too aggressive right off the bat. Straight line speed he's got by the bucketful here over Ferrari, so he just has to buy his time or wait for something to spill over, as Vitus is looking rather adamantly now to challenge for 4th place over Declan Anderson. It's Vitus with the hardest job at the moment. Is now at the inside. Goes Cas van Veltzen. That's for 5th place. Now he'll be looking to challenge for 4th over Declan Anderson. Could there be some scope of fight back from Ferrari and SimPlay's number 66, Zen Vitus? There is very likely the chance. Up the road, Friedman and Vermack still fighting, but it's McGowan leading by a landslide. 5 minutes into this 2-hour race, it has started with quite an explosive entry here at Silverstone, and we are far from over. Anderson having a little bit of trouble through Abbey and Village, now finds his way into the scope of things for a potential fight of 5th place. Meanwhile, sneaking into frame, dare I say it, a sneak attack from Alan Alexander. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with the Porsche here, the solo Porsche of this race. As a matter of fact, we'll catch with Zen Vitus, the defending of 2 parties here in that fight for 6th place. This is down the Wellington Straight, in towards Brooklands and Luffield. The number 27 up the inside, trying to follow through was the number 100, Jan Willem Bos of SimPlay. Couldn't find the space over the number 66. Bear in mind, hanging very close there. Zen Vitus has got his elbows out. White flags up ahead. We don't know if this is for a car on the track or in the pit lane at this time. White flag still out and present in that fight for 6th. That is definitely put a bit of a lump in the throat for a lot of drivers heading down through this section, but it has been cleared out as we make our way in through turn 1. 196 given a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That was one of several casualties at the start of this race today. Down through Beckett's, now into Chapel. Little bit of a stab there for the 27. A little bit of understeer trouble for that of Alan Alexander. Both he and his teammate Ben Meredith at the Euro Titans Endurance team led here in Silverstone for the longest time in wet and wild conditions. But now that we're out in the dry, he looks to be at the mercy of Zen Vitus. He looks for it up the inside through Stowe Corner, but with more momentum, it's Porsche versus Ferrari. 2 of the most iconic names in the world of sports car racing head to head here, down through to Vale and Club Corner. Ford no longer spectators to this fight. Jan Willem Bos in the number 100 car right behind us here is actively part of that fight for 6th. Up the road, Vermaak is dropping time from Friedman. SimPlay are doing a perfect defense of the lead at the moment. Will Friedman gunning for some brownie points here. He's looking at MVP status for SimPlay. That brilliant defense over Vermaak is what stemmed the tide here. It's allowed Ian McGowan a much easier safe travel in the opening 10 minutes of racing. He's been able to carve the gap out. Now, this is not entirely just on Friedman. McGowan has demonstrated already practically unstoppable pace here in Silverstone so far. Bear in mind, with an hour and 52 minutes, anything can and has proven already will happen here in Silverstone. Down towards Brooklands we go then. Still watching adamantly with this fight of 6th place. Now, bear in mind, there's battles going on all around the track. So we will be trying to get as many of them as we can here, but watching just quickly with how things look for the fight of 6th place. Now, we'll catch on with these 2 in due course, taking a look around the road. You are not starved for available fights here. 2 Race Club UK cars going head-to-head. That's Lamming versus Blade for 25th, down through to Brooklands and Luffield. Now joining them from behind, Liam Perslow in the number 32. A 3-way fight for 25th place. And further up the field, you find a fight going on here for 21st place. Sean McNally versus Scott Unsworth. BMW versus Nissan. Nissan up the inside, in through Copse Corner. Trying to hang it around the outside. The number 14 takes a little bit of runoff with him. Very nearly still side by side here, and I think the 21 might have position on him. Bear in mind, another Nissan right behind him. That BMW is swarmed in by Japanese machinery from both sides here. VSR's Sean McNally, and then right behind, as even he takes a little stab of oversteer, that's Rob Smith in the number 105. Then from behind him, another Japanese car, and that's Pettersson in the number 75 Lexus. And of the 3 Japanese cars here, the Land of the Rising Sun does favour that of Lexus. Fastest in a straight line. You can already see he's carved up one Nissan, looking for another here. And it's 2. Oh, never mind. Contact there between McNally and Pettersson. Get a look at this on the replays here. That was a bit rough. There was the ambition for it. You got to hand it to that Lexus. He had them both for dinner out through Chapel, but just couldn't get the car tied up in through that section. That one bounce led to 2, and that second bounce put him on his side. Not a great look then for Lexus. Bear in mind, things haven't exactly been lovey-dovey for Nissan as well. Those 2 Nissans, long before the Lexus arrived, were also at each other's throats. Looking up the road here, this is Declan Anderson with VSR looking onwards at a potential reignited fight for second place. Just under half a second separate Friedman from Vermaak. So we will be catching on board with these 2 in due course. Taking a look here, this is Harris just outside of the top 10 at this time, watching on as Lee Evans and James Burns do battle for 9th place on the grid. Taking a look at where things stand then, after 10 minutes of running, Ian McGowan leads, Will Friedman second, Tyler Vermaak third, Declan Anderson fourth, Cas van Velzen in fifth, Alan Alexander in sixth. But let's not rule out Zen Vitus, as we're about to see a potential fight back for sixth place. As we exit Chapel, the Ferrari's got the run over the Porsche. In the straightaways, it's pretty level pegging here between the two six-cylinders, but at the moment, that Porsche just holding on by a hair. My word, well, let's not have that one on stream. As we make our way down towards that of Valen Club. .196 now having cleared their stop-go, or their drive-through, I should say. 1 hour, 48 minutes left to go. Already having nearly burnt through the first quarter hour. Things are rather hectic here in Silverstone. Great fight back at the moment by Zen Vitus, but by a horse's hair. Let's not repeat what we said the last time. He finds himself still hanging on behind Alan Alexander. Jan Willem Bos, bear in mind, let's not rule out that Mustang. He's still much a part of that top 10, still looking on from behind, has one possible shot here. If anything does go on between the two cars up in front of him, he'll be the first to know about it. Looking further down the road, we did see a moment ago the potential fight to be between Burns and Evans. At this time, they're in en passant just at the back of that top 10 as they make their way out through Luffield in towards Woodcote. Tyler Vermaak, we can see really now pressing up towards the back of Will Friedman. As things are looking rather dire for Ian McGowan, he's dropped a lot of time in that last lap. That defensive barrier that SimPlay have spent nearly 20 minutes developing on is starting to crumble in the early phases of this race. Out through Chapel Corner, up the road there, looks to be the number 28. I believe that to be a lapped car for VSR. That, as a matter of fact, is Chris Davies, one of the early doors casualties of that huge incident down this very straight here at the hangar, straight down towards Stowe Corner. Vermaak had a look up the inside there, tried to nip things in on the 208 Mustang, but no dice there. Will Friedman defending for second. Bear in mind all of this now instead of that fight for first. Friedman isn't going to be trying anywhere near as hard as Vermaak is in terms of gaining position. It'll be one that if he does get it, he won't be arguing with. Let's see if we can go and catch on board there with the 208. Caught between a rock and a hard place here. He wants to defend for his teammate. He's already made it very clear that he's happy to play a little bit more defensively, to be alongside his teammate, to play for the team's sake. But heading in towards Village and then the loop, he might actually find himself increasingly vulnerable for that fight of second. Looking up the inside, Vermaak won't have anywhere near as much momentum to carry in towards Aintree, but he will still be there, so he can't get squeezed too much on the exit of Aintree. This is where he can get the run down the Wellington Straight. I almost said the Hangar Straight there. No, Wellington Straight, already getting his elbows out, moving over to the left-hand side of the track as we head in towards Brooklands and Luffield. Classic defense here from Friedman. He's just denying the inside of the track to Vermaak. He doesn't want him having any possible square inch of that area to play with at all. No momentum unless I say so, says the 208. Out through Woodcote we go. Out through Cops, and I think there is definitely a great degree of anxiety now being felt at SimPlay Motorsports. They've held on for 15 minutes here in Silverstone for that race lead at this time, and it could come apart at the hands of the 64. He is dropping time. The 208 might be a little too fast for his own good, because he is trying to match Vermaak's pace here. He's playing more defensively, and as a rising tide, as it were, of VSR machinery starts to back up onto them, as most recently I think there has been trouble. We want to get a look on board with this as Zen Vitus, who was part of that fight proper with quite a few cars out of VSR. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with what the current scope of things is looking like concerning Ferrari. Zen Vitus down to 7th there, so he's with Jan Willem Bos. Alan Alexander, he's still under attack. But now we can see, because of that fall down from out of the top 5, Zen Vitus has given rise to a huge attacking block here of VSR cars. Those two leading red SimPlay cars, they're off by the lonesome, separated from the rest of the field. Totally at the mercy of their own vehicle. Watching here, this is Lee Evans against James Burns. This could be quite an exciting one. This is for 9th. Heading in towards Village and the Loop here. Bear in mind, right behind them, that's Harris for SimPlay. The 3 leagues then head-to-head in that fight for 9th place. Michael Harris still hanging on behind there. Let's not rule out that BMW. When we want to talk straight line speed, that BMW is a note faster than the McLaren and the Nissan up in front of it, but that's usually on a law of extremes. We know it has the pace for it. It's a case now of trying to find the opportunity with such winding corners up ahead in towards Sector 1 here as we exit Copse Corner. It doesn't have many options in the way of getting side by side. It's practically suicidal to attempt on the run through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. His best opportunity, as we've seen historically here at Silverstone, will be a great run out of Chapel to stage a position run up towards Stowe via the hanger straight. Out through Chapel we go then. We're still on board with Lee Evans, caught in the middle of it all for 9th place. He's got Michael Harris behind him. He's got James Burns up in front. Race Club versus VSR versus SimPlay. These are your 3 main clans in this race, 3 main leagues competing here in Silverstone. But who shall take the glory right now? The eggs are in the basket of the SimPlay Motorsports team leading in 1-2. Let's go and catch on board with them just quickly here as we go on to the main screen. McGowan still leads by looks of things here, but they're backed up behind, that being Chris Davies of VSR. That's a lapped car. He was caught on in a huge incident at the start of today's race. Now finds himself inadvertently caught in the wake of a tremendously large battle for position at this time. Bear in mind, these 3 now separated front to back by less than a second. For Matt, you can see he's getting all manner of all over the shop here, left or right of the corner. He's trying to find even one area of the track where he can find a 10th. McGowan gets away through Aintree, half a second at the last interval between himself and Friedman, but that gap will be slimming quickly on their way in towards Brooklands and Luffield. Van Veltzen followed by Anderson. In the discussion of that fight for Vitas and Alexander still going on at this time. Jan Willem Bos still behind them. And then that fight down in 9th place we were watching on with earlier could be coming to a head here. So let's actually get back on board with the man in the middle, that being the 44 Lee Evans of VSR. Up in front of him, James Burns with Race Club. Out back, Michael Harris with SimPlay. They make their way through Woodcote. Can see over the McLaren, at least in the shorter straights here where acceleration is more of a dependency. Nissan does have it to go toe-to-toe with one of the most dominant manufacturers on ACC's current meta. Out back, BMWs are no slouch neither. P1 and P2 have swapped position, I'm being told, so there has been tactical calls for the SimPlay team. Friedman now leads the charge. McGowan into 2nd. Vermack in 3rd. Bear in mind, that tide of green machines has not yet stopped. Vermack, Van Veltzen, Anderson and Alexander still pursuing that race lead, but it's been Will Friedman unshackled from his defensive standpoint, let loose now up to the lead of this race. So what is the current hopes here for Ian McGowan? He had a great opening 20 minutes, but it's now fallen a little bit by the wayside here. And the 208, no longer contempt to defend him, has now gotten up and ahead, and he's off leading this race. He's already broken away by about 0.4 of a second since doing so. For Mack, though, we saw the intensity he brought to the table in his fight with Friedman. He's not exactly going to be loosening his grip here on the stranglehold he's trying to have over 2nd place, and a little wobble by the 64, almost said the 54, the 64 gives rise to a move out through Aintree. Vermack now side by side with Ian McGowan on their way down the Wellington in towards Brooklands. And could it be 2 positions in the scope of 1 lap for Ian McGowan that he's lost out on? First was the race lead, and now he's relegated to the back of the podium. Well, as we make our way through Luffield, great line at the moment by the 89. That could solidify it on the way out. A little bit of a stab of oversteer. He has really got that car tied up in terms of its setup. We were told before this is a case where Vermack has had to go it alone in terms of setting this vehicle up. It's a little rough around the edges, and bear in mind, Mercedes isn't exactly everyone's cup of tea. So out through Copse Corner, he does hold on to 2nd, but moreover, get a gander at that gap. 1.1 seconds, it's one of the largest gaps we have in the top 10. That's between the two leading cars now. New race leader, Will Friedman with the fastest lap. Tyler Vermaak now up to second. Ian McGowan to third. Van Veltzen fourth. Anderson fifth. Alexander in sixth. Zen Vitus in seventh. Jan Villenbos in eighth. James Burns in ninth. And Lee Evans round out the top 10. Getting a look here. Side-by-side action back up on the podium between McLaren and Mercedes. Down through the Valen Club. A big swath of oversteer there. I'm not sure what's going on. This has been a repeat occurrence for quite a few cars, not just McGowan and McLaren. It has been quite a few drivers have been getting too early onto the throttle out through club. Something's catching them and the car's rotating a little too hard. Right now, though, the 64 is losing steam over Vermaak. Now that he's up in a second, he can start to settle into a rhythm here. 1.7 seconds at the last interval. Now 2 seconds. Will Friedman has really let loose the leash and is gone here. He's took the baton from the 64 and ran. He's up by the lead by 2 seconds now, distancing himself more and more from Vermaak, whose nearest competition at this time is coming from a driver he's just gotten past by half a second now. Looking for nearby fights based off telemetry, we're not disappointed to see that Burns, Evans and Harris are still fighting it out for ninth place on the grid. It's been a fantastic little micro fight going on for ninth place in and amongst what has been full-scale 40-car plus warfare here in Silverstone. So looking further around the field as well as things start to simmer down just a touch inside of that top 5. We'll be catching on with these guys later on as things are starting to heat back up just a little bit. We're in the prelude for a major fight for what could be third place here for Cas Van Veltzen. Looking further down the line away from the top 10, as a matter of fact, you'll be finding nearby telemetry. The last report there for Ogan v Foster, that's since dissipated, but this one definitely hasn't. Benedict Varga versus Scott Unsworth. SimPlay versus Race Club. Now, we've seen a huge tumble down the order for the 75. Betterson in the Lexus. You can see what's potentially gone on from there. Sizable damage over the left-hand side. Let's get back on board, though, momentarily here with Benedict Varga looking to get his elbows out over Scott Unsworth. Out through Chapel Corner we go then. Jaguar versus BMW right behind them there. Distanced by the McLaren up in front of him. That's Sean McNally. Looking at it there, that's the number 10 McLaren. In terms of who that is on the field at the moment, that's an unlapping car. Lars Rammensberger, one of the cars caught up in earlier on in today's major incident. He's unlapped himself from both McNally and now from Varga as well. Now looks to take the fight over to his teammate, Scott Unsworth. Bear in mind, meanwhile, Varga v McNally. Two unorthodox machines go head-to-head here. Jaguar versus Nissan, holding very close to the inside for the run into Abbey. Where was the move really intended for the 47? McNally trying what he can from where he stands on the field here, just outside of the top 20. And right now finds himself a growing victim to the approach of Nick Lamming. Now to pick back up on some other fights as well. Here's the scope of things inside of that top 10 fight as well. Ninth place still up for grabs. Evans, Burns and Harris. Two yellow flagged cars at the moment. By looks of it there, the 186 and the number 28. So major issues on the horizon. This is the fight going on for 10th place at this time. Evans v Harris. Michael Harris and Lee Evans head-to-head here. SimPlay versus VSR. Just as it seems to be the case up inside of that top 5, it's happening towards the back of the top 10. BMW versus Nissan. Down towards Valen Club. Harris looking potentially up the inside, backs out of it, tries to force early defense from the 44. He'll compromise his momentum out through Valen Club corner. This could give him easier access to 10th place. On the exit of Club corner, down the Hamilton straight we go. Bear in mind, there's a very small, localized concertina effect going on between these three here. Burns, Evans, and Harris. There's a push and pull and ebb and flow that these three have seen over the span of the last 25 minutes. As for Varga v McNally, still going on for that top 20. In fact, I believe there has been an exchange of position there, as McNally now up and ahead of Varga. Whether that was originally the case or not is another thing entirely. We do see potential fighting coming up here. Anderson v Alexander, but considering these two are playing for the same team, it's highly unlikely we'll see anything on the same level of ferocity as we've seen so far between these three that have really stolen away the show amidst the dissipating action in the top 5. Bear in mind, there will be much to consider in the upcoming fight going on for the last of those podium positions. VSR's Cass Van Veltzen catching up to SimPlay Racing's Ian McGowan, the man who started from pole position today. Had early doors defense from his teammate, Will Friedman. Ultimately, it's been the elected choice of the 208 to take command of the situation. Now up and ahead of the 64 has left him for ransom as he makes his way up into the lead of this race now at the last interval by 2.8 seconds. A remarkable getaway then by Will Friedman. Meanwhile, according to the intervals here, very close fighting for Unsworth v Varga. This could be for 20th place on the field here, the 566 versus the 14. Scott Unsworth chasing Benedict Varga with Jaguar defending. Bear in mind, right behind them, Nick Lamming. 2 Race Club UK cars looking to fight here with the SimPlay Motorsports car guarding the last of the top 20s. Meanwhile, Sean McNally will be seeing great benefit in all of this, slowly getting away. Rob Smith runs into a spot of bother there. That's going to invite in Michael Adnall to come and have a go for 23rd place on the exit of Chapel Corner. Meanwhile, up the line, we can see those 2 Race Club UK cars are closing in fast. Let's get a look on board here with Scott Unsworth. He's got the run over Benedict Varga of SimPlay Motorsports. He's up the inside, in through Stowe. Can the Jaguar hold on over the BMW? It's a rather precarious sight, but I do believe it's possible. The 566 holds on over BMW. Scott Unsworth. Meanwhile, Nick Lamming looks to try and follow on the racing line to see what either of these two do in the scope of things round Vale and Club Corner. Valiant defense by Benedict Varga. Jaguar going toe-to-toe with BMW. I never thought I should see the day. Down the Hamilton straight we go. Meanwhile, in the background, that fight for 23rd, Smith v Adnall, still going on. Second time's the charm, perhaps, for Unsworth. Looking up the inside, in towards Village. And there is contact, a bit of rubbing there between the 566 and the 14. He lets him back onto the track through the loop. There, gets cut off, nearly runs in to that of the number 87. He squeezed through Aintree. This could get dicey for these three here. 2 Race Club cars versus SimPlay's Benedict Varga. He will not be happy with how things have been going so far. What's the fight back by the 566? It's up the inside. It's even more contact. This is white knuckle, touring car level stuff. And through, by the looks of it there, goes Rob Smith. Capitalizes on these two's frayed emotions to get in on this fight. He's up past his own teammate. Will he be inclined to give it back over? Unlikely. We'll have to wait to see what Varga does here. Tucks back in behind the Nissan, so very, very cheeky stuff. Rob Smith evidently just saw the situation in front, saw the gap and went for it. You can't blame a man for hunting down gaps where they may exist. Of course, we all know the adage by Ayrton Senna. Oh, the 105 in big trouble through Beckett's onto the grass. Great reaction timing there onto the brakes, but he's going to find himself into a whole tide of cars here trying to chase him as he makes his way back onto the racing line just in front of Betterson there with Lexus. Bear in mind, this is a very scary spot for him to be in. Hart just up in front of him there. Spike Hart in the number 26 car. Up through Stowe, right behind them. One of the VSR Nissans, I believe they might be navigating traffic here. Caught in a very uncomfortable spot. They're up the inside on Spike Hart. Meanwhile, we're still watching with Rob Smith in the 105. We'll catch on with him in due course. I'm told there is action going on up the road here. Evans is side by side with Burns, so we catch them right as things come to a head here for a fight of ninth, and it looks to be Evans up to ninth place. Carried the line out through Luffield, then as we made our way through Woodcote, now out through Copse, the Nissan solidifies ninth. Great stuff there by Evans. Meanwhile, looking up the line, we do see things get side by side now. This is for third place, McGowan versus Van Velsen. Van Velsen to the outside at Stowe is looking to tuck things back into a super late apex to give him the run he might need for a dive down towards Vale and Club. It's a dicey one, but we know what Van Velsen can do when it comes to a good dive bomb. Look no further. Season 3 Sunday League Monza as one of your best examples for what Van Velsen's capable of when push comes to shove. On the exit of Vale, now through Club, onto the Hamilton straight. Right behind him, still an entourage of VSR cars, Declan Anderson and Alan Alexander. Really starting to feel the heat now is Ian McGowan. Valiant defense so far, but it's waning in the advance of the 69, advancing from behind here. We are going to quickly see what things do go on for them just as they make their way onto the Wellington straight. And then we'll take a look back to some of the other fights we had going earlier on. Adnor v Varga, one of them on the exit, by the looks of it here, of Chapel. Now, we know the Mustang is a great straight line speed demon. The problem being, though, having a look at this, is that 19% reduction is going to be putting a bit of a hamper on them in terms of that straight line speed, especially over a heritage manufacturer like Jaguar that is working with far fewer restrictions on that XK. And ultimately, for that reason, Varga holds on to position. McGowan, in the meantime, now having lost position out, and by the looks of it, nearly permanently, to Cas Van Velsen, takes up third place. Regent in chat expressing discontent with the perhaps the event today. Is that because you couldn't compete in it by chance? McGowan in fourth place. Anderson trailing from behind, then following on from him, Alexander. So as that fight starts to dissipate, let's get back on board with these two here. It was to be the fight for Varga v Adnall, as we see there now forming up a buffer zone. And 196 makes his way through there. That's the Nissan of Mr. Burney. So hang on just a tick here. So I'm told that Regent is, as a matter of fact, in this race, when we originally claimed that maybe he's saying that this isn't so great because he's not in the... No, he is. Oh, well, it's lovely to put a name to an alias. It's lovely to meet you then officially for the first time then, John. It's a pity, though, that, of course, 33rd place on this grid was caught in one of the several casualties at the start of this race. Again, if we're just to think back on that, it was a cascade effect. And really, had it been a smaller grid, had it been maybe 20 cars, maybe 30 cars, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as bad. But it's the simplicity of the incident coupled with the amount of cars on that field. Only so many of them could have avoided a car careening out through Chapel. It was a domino effect after the third or fourth car. Meanwhile, up the road, side-by-side action coming up here. Harris v Evans. This is still for 9th place. All through the meanwhile, I want to point this one out. Jan Villenbos snuck his way through into a sneaky 8th place. Out back there, frayed out through Luffield. That was for James Burns. Now backs himself up onto Matt Wright, another SimPlay Motorsport car, looking at 11th place in his iron sights here, just off by 0.2 of a second on his way in towards turn 1. We'll quickly tab back in on this fight here, as there is, if I'm not mistaken there, that was contact. A little bit of contact, albeit, but contact nonetheless from what looked like our point of view. Of course, we'll wait to verify exactly if it was. And that was between Alexander and Anderson. Now, nothing too crazy had happened from that point onwards, just a little bump by looks of it. Could have been desync for all we understand. Right now, Anderson 6th, looking to defend against the car from 7th, Zen Vitus, looking at a revenge drive here towards the end of the first hour. Now, bear in mind, open-ended strategy, drivers will be gunning for that perfect 50-50 ratio here. We'll be seeing the majority of those pit lane runs, at least the ones done voluntarily, in the next 24.5 minutes as we hit the session halfway. In terms of where things are looking like on the podium then, after the first half hour of racing, it's Will Friedman leading the charge ahead of Tyler Vermack and Cass Van Veltzen. Ian McGowan in 4th, with Alan Alexander in 5th. Declan Anderson in 6th, Zen Vitus in 7th, Jan Wielenbos in 8th, with Lee Evans in 9th. Michael Harris rounds out the top 10 then. James Burns just outside of the top 10, fighting for 11th for the moment, away from Matt Wright in 12th place. Ian Oates in 13th, Lee Watson. He started from the pits. Let's point this one out, where respect is very much so due and earned for that number 13. Lee Watson started from the pits and is now 14th on this grid. That does take some serious grit. He finds himself up the road then from Cheetos in 15th place, Foster in 16th, Ogan 17th, Gregory 18th, McNally 19th, and Lamming rounds out the top 20. Unsworth 21st, Adnall 22nd, Betterson not far behind at all in 23rd. Not far behind him either is Varga in 24th place, Hart in 25th, Barrett 26th, Duff in 27th, Blade 28th, and that is Rob Smith in the 105, not to be confused with Robert Smith, who's down in 34th. He's 29th. Thomas Cardno in 30th. Ryan Auld, one of the reserve drivers for VSR, finds himself 31st, ahead of Chris Clements in 32nd. John O'Driscoll, 33rd, ahead of Robert Smith in the 117. SimPlay Motorsports Ford, one of several casualties today in the opening lap incident, 34th, ahead of Ben Godden, 35th. Perslow 36th, very close fight to be happening not far from now for 35th place on track. Lars Rammensberger 37th, Mr. Bernie 38th. Pedro Barros, who was originally looking to be the ace in the hole for the Race Club UK lineup, was again, like many drivers today, caught up in that huge incident down the Hangar Straight and is in 39th. Paul in 40th, Butcher 41st, and Gav Cherry Moore 42nd. In this race. Looking further up the order now, this is just based off of the interval timings. We are seeing a pretty close fight coming up. Vitus v Anderson, Ferrari versus BMW. Another close fight to be potentially considered at this time. Adnall versus Betterson. Richard Betterson has been able to hold the line so far for Lexus. He's had a series of ups and downs throughout this race. He's 22nd at the moment, fighting away from Adnall in 23rd. Now a distant memory of that fight is Benedict Varga. Finds himself just making his way out of Stowe. He's 2.2 seconds down the road, and that time looks to continue to open up here. Bear in mind, Adnall's in a tough spot. He's got plenty of cars coming on by, looking at a lap around the 36. Oh, that's a Ferrari off in front. One of the SimPlay Ferraris. Who on earth was that? It's the 186 car. Let's go and catch on board and see what's going on there. Gav Cherry Moore in trouble down through Vale and Club. He's pulled it off to the runoff zone here. Just waited for the Nissan to pass him up. And he's weighing up whether or not he returns to the track. The 186 had trouble down at Vale and Club. And there has managed to get things back up and running on the way down at the Hamilton Straight. You see here, very close fighting. Richard Betterson versus Michael Adnall. Down the Wellington Straight we go. Battle of the V8 juggernauts. The same, or almost the same, I should say. 5.4 litre engine. Bear in mind, third in that fight as well. And now looking to have position stolen off of him is a wounded Scott Unsworth. Bear in mind, he's had his fair share of fights today. Now finds himself on a two-pronged defensive from both his own team, that being of Adnall, who's just dropped in behind the 444 car by looks of it there. And that's, I believe, unlapping itself. And that is Pedro Barros. Drivers on completely different lengths of the race at the moment. Meanwhile, we see a fight out back here. Jonathan Barrett versus that of Hart in the 26. Spike Hart still holding on to the top 30. Looking back up the order, though. This was the fight we were trying to catch on board with for some time. Adnall, Betterson and Unsworth for 21st. Locally, that fight for 22nd, as things are a little bit wiry on the exit of Chapel. Rejoining is Barros up in front in that 444, trying to gain a little bit of slipstream and get shot of the situation ahead of Unsworth ASAP. Down towards Stowe we go, though, and the 75 is still in pursuit. Coming up 19 minutes from the session halfway, it's when things are going to get very busy in that pit lane, and not the first time today that has been such the case. In the background there, the number 55 getting his elbows out. That's Duffin up ahead of Adnall. Great move, though, down at Valen Club. Properly assertive. Actually, it wasn't ahead of... it was ahead of... Who was it ahead of there? We have a Mustang out behind. Yes, it was ahead of Adnall. It's getting quite bizarre to try and make head or tail of these grids when they've decided to run all these identical colour schemes. Meanwhile, side-by-side action here. Unsworth defending away from the 75 of Richard Betterson. Meanwhile, the 111 looks to try and get up and around them in this situation here. The 111 being driven by Hall. Down the Wellington, still the very same storm of steel that started this race just under 3/4 of an hour ago. V8 versus inline 6. What can Scott Unsworth do here? He's been carrying that nose damage with him from the incident at the start of this race. Coming into the pits by the looks of it then is Richard Betterson. Things are evidently a little too juicy in the opening stint for the 5.4 litre under the bonnet of that Lexus. Not to be confused with the 5.4 litre engine currently powering the Ford Mustang. Similar in concept, different in execution. Zen Vitus 0.3 of a second away from Declan Anderson. This has been the most long-winded fight for position we've seen throughout today's race. These two still in arms for it 10 minutes after the first time this had occurred for them. Out through Luffield we go towards Woodcote. We just see further down the line very quickly. Burns versus Wright. We have someone in chat asking, how is Clements doing? Let's go and find on ball. Hang on a tick there. That's contact between Burns and Wright. Very nearly missed out on that one. Let's just get a look on the replay here whilst we try and find that of Chris Clements. Now on your live display there in the bottom right, Clements finds himself currently 31st in this race. There was contact down through Luffield there between Matt Wright and James Burns by seemingly they're the fault of the 135. Clements now to 30th in the time that we've been covering it there, because Betterson is down to 31st. Actually, even further down to 33rd there. So big trouble has happened in the meantime for Richard Betterson. That's been to the benefit of Clements at this time. 30th in this race. 9.5 seconds from Thomas Cardno of SimPlay Motorsport in 29th. And then bear in mind 13.1 seconds from John O'Driscoll in the 21 of VSR Phoenix. Things rather distant towards the back of the field. Meanwhile, up front, we've just seen, or I suppose what we haven't seen, has been the advance back up to 6th for Zen Vitus. What is the fight back chances here for Declan Anderson? With just under, or just over, I should say, a quarter of an hour before the mass pit entry that we're expecting to see from almost all drivers who have yet to have been taken to the pits by damage. Everyone will be looking for the least amount of pit stops in this race. They want that one-stop strategy we've seen already in the Triple Crown Enduro Series we covered earlier on last week with the folks over at the Competizione Performance League, that the two-stop strategy, while it does have its benefit and it does give you overall better pace, in a 2-hour race, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze, and a one-stop will still pitch it out 99% of the time. So Vita's now up into 6th, and the fight-back chances, I dare say, are looking rather slim for that of Declan Anderson. Down to 7th. And now out by over a second as we make our way in towards that of Maggots, Beckett and Chapel. Getting on board here with a close gap. This is a sub-second gap for 13th between Oates and Watson. Now, you've got to hand it here, and I mentioned this a second time just because to stress the importance of this point. Lee Watson started from the pit lane on what was a 42-car grid. He is now 14th. He's well beyond the top 50% of this grid, and moreover, is looking ever closer if he plays things very close to the chest strategically at being within the top quarter, looking in and around maybe 10th place if he's able to stick things out the way things are at the moment. That is serious turnaround. Well, let's go and catch on board with some drivers around the track to give you a more hands-on perspective. We do have a yellow flag out. It's for the number 14 car. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with them at this time. And there we can see it's Scott Unsworth. So we were watching not long ago with their fight, and following from in front of him there, that's Jonathan Barrett in 26th place, just as we make our way down towards that of Brooklands and Luffield. Green flags back out for the time being. 3/4 of an hour in, running all the way out wide was Jonathan Barrett, rejoining the track behind Unsworth. Into the pits then comes Scott Unsworth. Rather unsurprisingly, you can see the damage now a little too hefty to bear for him. He's already been riding with nose cone damage, and now it's gotten even worse for him in the closing 15 minutes of the first half. Looking for where nearby fights could be concerned. Robert Smith versus Richard Betterson. It does still perplex one to imagine what has happened for Betterson to put him down in 34th place on the field. Meanwhile, out back, we can see the fight for 13th. That's Oates v Watson down the Wellington. A silent procession for this one. Jan Willem Bos was on and off the roster for SimPlay Motorsports for some time in the run-up towards today's event after the delays of last week. It is a curious one. It could very well be the case that Betterson has pitted early. Actually, yeah, no, it is. So it doesn't perplex me at all. I'm being stupid. Never mind. It was the case of the Lexus coming. I mean, no one else is driving the Lexus. So we do just see here, this is the fight we've been trying to catch on board with. This is for 13th place. Watson v Oates, Nissan versus Mercedes. So thank you to It's the Plums in the chat for keeping me in check there. I mean, I'm kind of happy this is the last race of 2025, just for a short while here. We have been flat out throughout the winter months, and I do apologise for the probably many times on these live streams that we do trip over ourselves. I'm a one-man operation after all, so it's good to have any kind of extra eyes on the field here, even if it is from the Twitch chat. Out through Stowe Corner then, still on that fight for 13th, Watson v Oates. Yeah, 42 cars is a lot to keep track of. I think more the extreme cases, we've had it before. There's been about 35, 36 odd cars. That was with the XCL Pro Series. A lot of them we knew by name already. To learn a bunch of new drivers in such a short span of time. Of course, this has still been a fantastic opportunity. Originally, we weren't originally around, and then we were able to mix things up in terms of the schedule, and especially with the delay as well, has made things a little bit more open-ended for us. Sadly, that's why we're without our graphics in this time. Normally, for those of you who've been tuning in before here on TRTN, you'll remember the fact that we do have a lot of on-screen graphics to play with. This has been quite a short-scale production to get this event underway, and then with the delays as well, and of course Christmas, we've not had a lot of time to ourselves. Down through to Copse Corner then. This fight still stuck in an uneasy stalemate here. Mercedes versus Nissan. It could tip on a moment's notice here. And with 10 minutes left to go in this opening half, we are expecting things to get all the more livelier in that pit lane in a moment's time. Everyone's still gunning for that one-stop strategy we saw from Betterson earlier, of course, as we then immediately forgot, because we are slowly going stir crazy here in the commentary boxes, that there was that early pit stop for Betterson, now 32nd in this race. Because the engine, it could definitely be suggested either damage, tyre conditions, or perhaps the engine is too juicy. Plenty of options to pick from with the older cars like the Lexus, and also for that of the Jaguar, which finds itself onto this grid today. See, running out a little bit wide there through Stowe. Lee Watson above and beyond the call of duty today in that opening half. Down towards Vale and Club. Number 6 running wide there. It's going to have to hold the inside in through the loop. That's been enough to keep him in position at the moment, but he's carrying a lot less momentum, notably out through Aintree. So that's going to be to the benefit of the number 13, tucked up in his slipstream there. Watson still pursuing for 13th. Meanwhile, in the pit lane, movement from the number 9 car. Super late on the brakes there for the 13. He did run a little bit out wide for the first part through Brooklands, was able to tuck things back in for the run up through Luffield. It seems to have been the same case for that number 6. Both of these two swerving all over the track in efforts to find that racing line. Out through Woodcote we go. In that last lap, faster by 100, and by looking at it here, 42 thousandths of a second, Lee Watson. And this could be where it comes to a head here. I did say functionally suicide to attempt it, not that it hasn't been done before, and it looks very nearly, yes, to be side-by-side action for but a moment on the run through Maggots, then in through Beckett's and into Chapel. We're back to single file, but what is the current plan for Lee Watson? In through Chapel we go. We see that he's trying to maximize momentum. He's trying to almost slingshot his Mercedes out through that last section, even if it means compromising on Beckett's. Ultimately, the Nissan has proven to be an ample heel here for the 6.3 litre under the bonnet of that Mercedes of Lee Watson. Out through Stowe Corner. He's going to have to take the element of surprise into consideration here. Time is drawing near for that pit lane run. Everyone is going to be looking for it at the halfway mark, himself included. After what has been one hell of an opening stint, surfed through the madness of a pit lane start in towards what was a battlefield scape down through into the Hangar Straight for the first time. Through Farm into Village. You can see now the number 6 very privy to the game that Watson is playing here. He's no fool. He knows precisely what's happening. He knows where to defend. Ian Oates has been experienced with that Nissan for quite some time now. He's one of 3 key drivers at VSR to know that Nissan implicitly. We'll catch up with this fight for 13th, though. We'll take a look around the field to see where the rest of the grid is concerned. Cas van Velzen makes 3rd place then at the moment. Ian McGowan has now dropped 2.5 seconds down. VSR make 2 of the 3 podium positions, but leading again by that landslide, and it's continued to open up all the more in towards the end of this first half. Is Will Friedman of SimPlay Motorsport 6.744 seconds ahead of Tyler Vermack in 2nd place. For McGowan, the chances to be intercepted here are starting to rise as Alan Alexander, 5th place at the moment on this field, is hunting him down. Now, to point out that early run to the pits earlier, we said it was the number 9 car, and here he is. Declan Anderson now 17th in this race, not far from Robert Ogan in the 96 car. Making his way down towards Copse. Now, there could definitely be method in the madness here for Anderson. An earlier pit stop is going to give him potentially the chance to undercut quite a few of the cars coming into the pits in the next 6.5 minutes here. So it's a lot to play for. It's a bit of a long-winded gamble. He was in a confident position inside of that top 10. We'll see what he can make of it in the next 10 minutes. See here, that's Rob Smith giving way to the 69 of Cas van Velzen in towards Brooklands. Oates not too far off of Watson. Now that Watson has now got out in front of that Nissan, so in the time we cut away from them, the number 13 now up to, by looks of it, 12th place as it stands. Was an advance for position behind them.
Meanwhile, Cas van Veltzen into the pit lane then. So also, like Declan Anderson, looking at a potential strategic undercut. We'll see how well that's played for him in the next 5 or so minutes. Bear in mind, because there's no set pit window or mandatory pit stop limit, those dangerous enough to try it could definitely have a go at trying absolutely everything to get as much fuel out of the car and pit very, very late. Now, it is, albeit very dangerous, and ultimately the juice won't be worth the squeeze when you consider that the tyres will be very mangled, I'd say, by that point. You would end up losing more time than you've ever stood to gain doing that. It's not to say that you can't, and we probably will end up seeing someone do just that. 69 then still in the pit lane. Meanwhile, Oates has stayed close here to that fight with a 13, but as you can see, now that he's shaken off the Nissan, he's got out in front of him. That Mercedes is really able to spread its wings and fly. Lee Watson is not wasting any time here. That free position, because of the earlier pit stops, it's going to be playing very nicely into his hands at this time. The number 69 emerges from behind him, so that will push Lee Watson up to 11th place. Looking for where the nearest fights are concerned on track based off telemetry alone, you'd be looking at potentially Fireblade versus Benedict Varga. We did see a little bit of it in the background earlier on, the McLaren versus the Jaguar, but as you can see here, holding his nerve off through the Wellington straight to let another SimPlay McLaren get on by, making his way down towards Brooklands. That has backed him up on a Rob Smith in the 105. Another potential nearby fight, Clements v Cardno. Bear in mind, as we've been watching in the background for a moment there, we've seen more cars into the pits. That'll be Fireblade that's come in. You can see in the background as well, Alan Alexander is into the pits as well. And coming into the pits as well, John O'Driscoll in the number 21. Watching here, Chris Clements versus Thomas Cardno on his way in towards turn 1. Quickly getting a look through the top 10. Yes, you can now confirm Alan Alexander in the pit lane. From behind them, O'Driscoll into the pit lane as well. In front of them, Fireblade into the pit lane. So this fight currently going on for what is effectively 25th place, when one considers Fireblade's dropped position there, as you can now see it updated from the charts. Watson into the pit lane now as well. A great opening half here for Lee Watson. Let's see what he can do before the checkered flag. You can see movement up in front of him. Also in the pit lane at this time is that of Burns in the number 420. James Burns had a great opening stint as well, was caught up in a great fight earlier on, and you can see because of the amount of cars on this grid, they actually have to share a pit lane, giving us very bizarre visuals like these. This bizarre chimera of vehicles. I think last time we had a McLaren Mercedes was back in, what would it have been now? What, the late 2000s? And this is how they made the SLR. No more on that. I feel like we owe them the privacy. Heading in towards the look here for Lee Evans. The run out through Village and the Loop. 6th place at the moment for the number 44, but you can see that a lot of his contemporaries at the VSR team have been taking earlier runs to the pits. That's opened up a huge tide of vehicles here for the top 5 in terms of presence by SimPlay Motorsport. Now it's McGowan, Vitus and Boss. We'll catch on with these 3 in a moment's time. We're just going to take a look on board with the number 96. We'll be back as well in just a moment's time. I was about to just quickly head away there. But we just saw this move, Konstantinos Chitos versus Cas van Veltzen. This is for 10th on the field. You see, he's back in action almost immediately. You can take him out of the fight, but you can't take the fight out of him. He is a very, very serious customer. As a matter of fact, Cas van Veltzen did take victory in Silverstone over technicality in the finale rounds of Season 3 of the NLRL Sunday League. He was a very capable fighter there, and he's just as much so today. Rimac now in the pit lane as well, just before we head away for a moment's time, as we head in towards that session halfway. Catch on board with these 2 here, Benedict Varga and Rob Smith. We'll be back in just a few seconds.
And so, more recent moves into the pit lane. Robert Ogan comes in. So too does Konstantinos Chitos after his move against him for 10th place by Cas van Velzen. Bear in mind, a great influx of cars is expected in the pits at this time as well. Still plenty of cars left unaccounted for. Now, you can definitely make the argument from, say, about 20, I'd say probably 28th to 30th backwards. The greater majority of them have probably already pitted as part of that huge wage wave of casualties we saw in the opening lap of this race. Into the pits then comes Will Friedman. So any attempt for an undercut by Vermaak now being directly counted. We'll see. This was very early in for Friedman. Normally, we've seen out of a lot of the XCL drivers, they like to go the extra mile, maybe 2 to 3 more laps over what anyone behind them is concerned with, just so that they can keep the gap nice and healthy. But he's not wasting any time this time around. Also joining him in the pits, Zenvitas in Jan Willem Boss. SimPlay making a big move into the pits, staying out and then retaking the lead for the time being will be Ian McGowan. The 44 stays out as well. That's Lee Evans with VSR. Harris stays out. Wright looks to be coming in, so that's Matt Wright with the 135 Ferrari, SimPlay Motorsports. Meanwhile, further down the line, we've got Michael Adnall and Nick Lamming. They're both in the pits, 19th and 20th. In the pits in the background, we can see as well, I believe, not the 55, but it is... oh, hang on, but a moment here. This is rather dramatic news, folks. News from the 208, a stop-go 30-second penalty for Will Friedman for speeding in the pit lane. That is a rather remarkable one. Now, normally things are airtight for drivers like Friedman. Very rarely is it we ever see cases where they've tripped up in the pits, they've gone too fast in, something has gone awry. Normally things are sealed up nice, neat and tidy, but for Friedman, that is quite a heavy impact here. What it could mean for Vermaak, the first driver to try and challenge them for that position, if we're talking in the great scheme of things. Now, I would like to point out as well, under strategy, I'm pretty sure that Van Velzen still needs to pit at this time. I'm not actually 100% on that one. I'm pretty sure he's still yet to. This is why we love having that mandatory pit stop marker there. We can't actually keep track of it from where we're positioned. For Mac, though, still looking at the undercut. And as far as we know, he'll be in provisional second, was to be provisional second, and is now going to lead. So this has all come up lovely for the number 89. The Mercedes of Tyler Vermaak potentially looking at a chance in the next 57 minutes to win here in Silverstone at the 2 hours of Silverstone. VSR versus Race Club UK versus SimPlay Motorsports. League v League v League, this interleague series. And now, so I'm told in conversations I've had with some of the folks over at Race Club UK, as we've just seen as well, also in the pits, Spike Hart and Benedict Varga of Race Club and SimPlay respectively. With some of the conversations I've had with some of the people from Race Club UK, Lee Evans now in the pits as well, that this might become a more routine thing heading into 2026. Now, we don't know yet which leagues will be involved. I can say as well that these 3 leagues are not the only ones that we know of on our radar on TRTN that are looking to do the same thing that we might be covering in the near future. Now, it's still very early in the talks, and I'm not going to divulge much of it, A, because I'm not of liberty to do so under contract, and B, because we still don't know quite yet what's going to happen. But 2 major teams on the current scope of TRTN's range of operations are looking to do an interleague series, much like the one you're seeing today. All will be revealed then in 2026. In the meantime, Will Friedman is in to serve that stop-go 30, and that has rung the requiem knell here for Tyler Vermaak to, under strategy by looks of things here, lead in Silverstone. Cas van Velzen's up in front of him there in 4th place. And the 69 Nissan has had great hustle so far, but the gap is starting to wane between them two. McGowan stays out. Evans is just on his way out of the pits as well. He'll drop down a few positions. Van Velzen up to 2nd. That'll put Vermaak 3rd at this time. Could it be victory for VSR? The Iron Wall strategy from SimPlay Motorsports has started to crack just ever so slightly because of that slip up by the 208. A serious sort of piece on the board here has fallen out of room, or fallen out of line. For Friedman, it was an honest mistake. I'm sure plenty of drivers, and we've seen it before, have made this mistake down at Silverstone. Not a particularly long run into the national pits as compared to what we have at the Grand Prix paddock, where you can get yourself slowed down a lot easier for the run into that, as we've seen in Formula 1.
But it's just an honest mistake by the looks of it there for Friedman, but it is one that has cost him rather dearly. That stop-go 30 is going to put a huge hamper on his performance throughout today. He's right back into action now, fighting with Duffin in the 55 up in front of him there. Two SimPlay Mustangs towards the back of that top 10. Bear in mind, we saw not long ago under strategy, Alan Alexander was into the pit lane, so he has taken what I can only assume is more fuel, perhaps the consideration of new tyres as well. That does seem to be the most common strategy. I mean, it's in the same way that you would most commonly eat and drink every day unless you die. So you realistically expect a lot of these drivers have gone with a rather traditional set of ideals coming into these pits. That's not to say everyone will. There could be someone you know, insane enough perhaps to just put fuel on the car. That's the purest nature of these open-end strategies. You never quite know what the teams are doing. It's very clear to see though from Alexander these are new tyres, because that Porsche is looking a lot more sprightly than it did before it came into the pits. Case in point right there, he's really able to hook the nose in through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, where he wouldn't have been able to in the laps running in. As far as nearest gaps are concerned, in the blink of an eye, Friedman has descended upon Duffin and already up to 10th, beginning his charge back up to a potential race lead. With 54 minutes against the clock and with superior pace to the rest of the field, is that a chance one might consider for the 208? We've seen crazier things in endurance races before, especially here at Silverstone. So I wouldn't rule it out in the case of Will Friedman. See here up the order. Benedict Varga currently caught up in front of Lee Evans. The Nissan gets around him there on the exit of Stowe in towards Vale and Club. Behind him, Declan Anderson, who was an early pit stop runner, now back up into that top 10. 8th place from the number 9 at this time, and with considerable distance over Matt Wright in 9th. He'll be nearest in the iron sights here, so it could be slightly easier transit up towards perhaps even 8th place here in the consideration of position gains in the next 53 minutes for Will Friedman. I highly doubt a lot of his teammates will be looking to fight him too much in this situation. But bear in mind, as much as this is a League v League race, a lot of these drivers will be still taking it a little bit personally, and it's kind of hard not to in an industry such as this. I'm not sure everyone's just going to want to move out of the way because they wear the same coat of colours. No one wants to end up in a situation where the teams fight with each other, though. I think that is definitely the double-edged sword. A lot of these drivers are in it for, you know, the fun and the enjoyment. It is a nice little thing towards the end of the year. So they are going to be playing a little bit more brash than perhaps we normally expect to see. A lot of these leagues are coming into this quite headstrong. They do want to put their best foot forward, and with that is going to come a little bit of a sort of an uneasy tendency about most. We now see a new fight emerge. This is for 11th place at the moment. This is James Burns versus Matthew Duffin. Out through left field. Super easy for a driver to get side by side and then make contact through this section. As you can see, Duffin comes in, so it's rather easy there for Burns as he stays out through Woodcote. 52 minutes left to go then here in Silverstone. Still plenty left to wrap up. Talk of the day, though, is going to be that discussion for Tyler Vermaak. Can he win here in Silverstone? Their chances are definitely quite likely. Under strategy, I'm pretty certain we've still yet to see Van Veltzen and McGowan. But as I say that, there goes Ian McGowan into the pit lane. So it is going to give rise to either a chance here. Does Van Veltzen stay out and lead? Or does he come into the pits and take new tyres and more fuel? As of right now, things are still yet decided for that 69. This is where the inner team politics starts to creep in a little bit on these drivers here, because as much as they do want to sort of help each other out, one must consider that Van Veltzen and Alexander are from Euro Titans and have been drafted in to compete for VSR. Tyler Vermaak is from Exclusive. Those are rival teams on any other circuits. Today, they've been forced to work together. Will that be really the whole case? Of course, a lot of these drivers have raced before. They do understand each other. Van Veltzen and Vermaak were in fact championship rivals back in the Sunday League. They do have quite a lot of respect for one another. So I highly doubt in my mind that we could be seeing anything close to that. Meanwhile, into the pits at the moment, Rob Smith has been joined by Thomas Cardno and Chris Clements. Also in the pits with them at this time, that's the 355 Harley Butcher. down in 40th place. 50 minutes left to go. You see here in his efforts to unlap, or efforts to lap, I should say, a backmarking SimPlay McLaren. This is the 27 of Alan Alexander. Has the chances today to finish upon the podium. McGowan, in the meantime, has actually, that is McGowan. So I thought this was a car that was lapped. No, this is for position. So that really did throw us off guard. McGowan, as far as the charts were concerned, was still up towards the front. But no, there is really the scope of it. This is not just a simple traffic maneuver. This is, as a matter of fact, the fight for third. So I'm quite glad the charts updated that before things got a little too close for comfort between these two. That's not to say things aren't going to. Out through Club Corner on the way onto the Hamilton Straight, the 64 is forced into an uneasy spot. He's still trying to bed heat into those tyres. Not that it will take him too long in conditions like these. Of course, still in and around the high 20s. It's dropped a bit here from what was 33 degrees during qualifying. It's now 29 degrees on track. A little less heat to put in those tyres. It means it takes just a tad longer to get the tyres up to good heat. Not that it takes particularly long at all. He was just caught in a bit of an awkward moment there by Alexander. Now on the exit of Aintree, he's been able to start opening the taps back up, as it were, on that McLaren. It's another major pitfall of ACC, is just how slow the data is to update. First, it's the menu navigation, and then it's this. That's why we're quite happy to announce that heading into 2026, TRTN will be working rather extensively with a few clients to start propelling our mission towards iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate. Of course, that doesn't mean that ACC will completely disappear from TRTN's calendar. We wouldn't dare. We built our career off the back of streaming races on this game. We're not going to go anywhere until we're certain that there's nothing left to find. Heading in through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, McGowan versus Alexander. Still half a second for one another, but one fight I might want to consider in a moment's time is going on up in front, as the gap has now sliced down the middle between Vermaak and Van Velzen. The chances therein remain. Could these two potentially have a little fight up front? Highly unlikely, but still we would want to try and catch the move that is deciding the race lead. As for where the leading pair are, they're on the run down into this section of the track right now, into Vale and Club Corner, not far up the road, as a matter of fact, from McGowan and Alexander. About 5.9 seconds, the gap between second and third at this length of the race, just heading into the final 3/4 of an hour. Now, another gap I want to pay attention to here, just scrolling away from these two for the time being. Will Friedman is catching up rather quickly here to Matt Wright in 9th place as they make their way out of Chapel onto the hangar straight down towards Stowe. You can see, even in spite of that 19% restriction, the Ford has got pace over Ferrari in the straightaways here down towards Stowe Corner. Friedman has been able to work quite nicely against the BOP today. Ford, we really did think that that 19% restrictor would have neutered the performance off the 7th gen Mustang. It's been anything but. You've got two Fords inside of that top 10, Jan Villenbos and Will Friedman. This is in the current fight for 9th place. You can see, though, the 135 looks to be, as a matter of fact, moving over there. So as we predicted before, not a lot of the drivers at SimPlay are going to want to fight with Will Friedman after what's happened to the 208. Matt Wright made a tactical decision there to move down to 10th place, giving 9th place up to Friedman and opening up the gap between himself and the next driver up the line here. That'll be 8th place, Declan Anderson, on his way down towards Brooklands and Luffield. Getting back on board with McGowan v Alexander. That's not gone anywhere on the exit of Copse Corner. As a matter of fact, things might be closing up here by the looks of it. The gap shows 6/10. I would definitely hazard a guess it's a little closer than what the data's telling us so far. In through Beckett's into Chapel. Down the hangar straight we go. We'll try and catch on board directly with that Porsche. We just quickly see here, this is the scope of things from up front. Cas van Velzen and Tyler Vermaak, VSR leading in 1-2 formation. The 69 has stayed out 15 minutes out past that midway mark. We'll be waiting to see what he does, if anything does happen for him at this length of the race. We do want to try and catch on board with, though, and we're looking for the Porsche of Alan Alexander, and there he is in the number 27, making his way out through Abbey in towards Farm and Village. Meanwhile, we're running into traffic up the road there. That's Ryan Auld. That's the reserve drive, number 35 there for VSR. Quickly making his way out of the line of sight of these two, McGowan and Alexander, in a world of their own. This is for the fight of third on the field so far. We will be watching that triangle-shaped marker on the map to your left-hand side. That represents the number 69, that being Cas van Veltzen. We'll see as we head towards the pits if there is any consideration at all for Nissan at this time. 45 minutes left to go here in Silverstone. Doesn't look to be by the sound of it. In terms of that fight for third, McGowan is quickly finding his footing now into the second half of this race, and the gap is starting to build. Looking at the intervals there, 159.520 to a 159.950. That is 430 thousandths of a second, 4/10 300ths between those two. Just a little under half a second difference in pace. That is the death sentence, really, for a fight of third, unless anything untoward happens to the 64 out in front. Alan Alexander will just have to hold on for dear life here in the next 44 minutes and see where it lands. Looking around the field to see where the nearest fights might be coming from here. One could be on the cards, Michael Adnall versus John O'Driscoll. 21, 1.7 seconds away from the 36 of Adnall. This is Will Friedman's point of view. He's caught up with traffic in front of him there. Mr. Burney and Spike Hart, 36th and 27th. Now, it will be a little bit of free slipstream from the 196, making his way down the hangar. Question therein remains, with the fight of 26th going on up in front of him, Benedict Varga versus Spike Hart. Are either of those two going to feel inclined to move over for the 208 so early? We've seen for the most part, blue flag etiquette has been very precise so far in this race from all three sides, being Race Club UK, VSR and SimPlay. You can see there the 26 giving due course for Friedman, not looking to put up much of a fight at all. Of course, not that he's inclined to be. The blue flags do indicate that you've got to get out of the way. Now, a common misconception most people find in GT racing is that it adheres to a very similar philosophy across the board to what we get in, say, Formula 1, for example, where you have a preset number of blue flags to move. Otherwise, it's grounds for penalty. And endurance racing, it's really just the responsibility of the overtaking car. On a league-by-league basis, it's really any pick. Most leagues operate on the basis in an endurance race that it's the responsibility of the overtaking car, and there's no stress that you must absolutely get out of the way and drop time off of your own race. Some leagues like to operate it towards the F1 side. I know for a fact that NLRL's Sunday League does operate a little closer to that, just because it's a lot shorter, the races, whereas the Console Endurance Series doesn't. In terms of this, they've been definitely a lot more urgent, and that's fair. Good respect from all three sides here. It's the Plums in chat saying at this point, almost safe to assume Van Veltzen has made a stop. Not sure fuel would go this far without a stop. As we see in the pits there is Ben Godden in the 95. Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty safe assertion. So it's a stealthy pit stop if he's already done one there for Van Veltzen. Let's go and catch on board with the 69. But let's not rule out the chances of losing this race lead here. Now, he's got confident control of that Nissan so far, but as we can see, the gap has dropped beneath 2 seconds and has stayed now beneath 1.5 seconds for the course of this lap. Tyler Vermack is gaining considerable ground over the 69 for reasons that we are yet able to explain. Whether or not it might be, and there's plenty of theories one could devise for this situation. Is he lifting and coasting? Is it the fact that Vermack has overall more pace over Van Veltzen? That's not strictly been the case. These two are very close match for pace. We've seen them compete throughout seasons now, multiple, where these two have been in close proximity to one another. They are almost the perfect heel, the yin and the yang, as it were. I'd say, yeah, it's a pretty solid theory now that he has definitely taken that pit stop. And fair play to Van Veltzen, because that is some strategic witchcraft, so much so that it's gone that far under the radar that it's left even us questioning if there was the pit stop at all. And if it does turn out that he's about to go into the pits, then One can only imagine what lengths he's had to go to fuel extend. Right now, though, we are in the prelude for a fight of the lead. 1.2 seconds, potentially closing in through Chapel. Nissan versus Mercedes. Now on the exit of Chapel, down the hangar. .1 seconds. We are getting dangerously close now to fighting territory. Two VSR cars at the front of this pack. Now, they're not going to be pushing each other, I would say, too hard for position, as bear in mind you can see the physical gap only 5 seconds away from them, just behind the BMW of Hall on track at the moment is that of Ian McGowan with SimPlay. So they're not going to be trying too hard to get their elbows out, to be a little bit more on the argy-bargy side of things. They've got good control of position right now. It's actually a role reversal of where things were concerned at the start of this race, where there was two SimPlay cars up front with VSR attacking. Now they've got the upper hand, and in the latter portion of the race, they've got the best seat in the house. So we'll see what goes on in the next 39 minutes, as I still think there is a lot left to decide in this race here in Silverstone. We've seen things go all the way down to the wire, lest we forget as well the incredibly controversial last lap of the 6 hours of Silverstone. A huge prang between the 77 and the 112, and there was that swap over move down the Wellington between the 123 and the 112. Fats GT sort of returning a sportsmanlike gesture back towards 5-star. A very bizarre way to end a race. And I think we're about to see the start of a very bizarre ending fight for that lead. As you can see, it was night and day difference for straight line speed. Axel Cassier in chat just subscribed at tier 1. They've been on a 6-month streak with us now. Thank you so much. Out through Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. 0.7 of a second. It is almost a case of when and not if Vermaak will find himself side by side with Van Velzen. If it has to have been, I mean, it's either been no pit stop for him and he has managed to do some bizarre witchcraft with that V6 engine, or it's a case where he is pitted very early. A much more plausible theory. You can see the tremendous wads of understeer he's having to deal with through Stowe Corner to keep himself up in front of that Mercedes, down through the Valen Club, watching over that tremendous rear wing on the Nissan of Cas Van Velzen. The number 89 just looms in the distance there. Off in the background, you can see just a little red dot out past the Mercedes. That is Ian McGowan in the 64. These two are standing on what is effectively a ticking time bomb. The longer they spend in each other's wake, the much easier it's going to get for the 64 to catch up and take both their positions for ransom and go back to the race lead. It is not impossible to suggest we could be seeing something along those lines, because the 69 doesn't show any signs of capitulation too early on. He's still got a fight left to fight for. Down towards Brooklands we go. And that Mercedes, it's just been ramping up its continuous gain in velocity. It's dangerously fast now at this level for the 89. Meanwhile, the 69 stays strong in through to Woodcote. Now, predictions for this fight here, I do have it pitched that Vermaak, at least under what strategy is dictated so far, is going to have the upper hand for the greater part over Van Velzen. One thing that we must consider, Van Velzen knows a thing or two about defense, but the question is, given the circumstances that exist both internally and externally here, will they be so inclined to get properly elbows out like they did back in the Sunday League? I don't think it likely. And you can really take that into consideration now. There's going to have to be a point. The VSR team will look at this and think, when abouts do we let the 89 roll on through? We are 3.3 seconds and we are dropping time at a rate of knots here to the 64 car behind. McGowan will catch at this rate here if they stay in this order. So something has got to happen, and something has got to happen fast here for the 69 car. Out through Vale in towards Club. One thing that is a major takeaway so far as we head in to the hour and a half mark not far from now is that it has really been anyone's race to play for, and this is one of the very rare occasions where you look at a grid with so many names that you recognize and so many names that you don't, and are genuinely at a loss for a prediction as to who could be up towards the front. These two were heavy hitters, but even under these circumstances, both of them could be shown up by Ian McGowan, a driver we've only seen a handful of times. And SimPlay really do have a bit of a checkmate over VSR here, because they're going to force them to fight themselves before they have to get involved. That gap is still coming down. It's now south of 3 seconds. Bear in mind, we now have yellow flags out for the upcoming Sector 1. That's for the number 75 car. Let's see if we can go and quickly catch on board with who that is. That'll be for Richard Bettison with Lexus. Even more issues there as he gets back up and running. Still watching with this fight for first, as it could come to a head at any moment here, heading back down towards Copse Corner. Trying to catch on board then with the Mercedes fighting for position. Let's go and catch on board with Tyler Vermack, currently second place in this race here. We're scrolling by manufacturer. So there is Mercedes and there is Tyler Vermack. Hunting down a chance of first place. It's 0.2 of a second. If he can get one good run out through Chapel Corner, this could be the setup all that he needs to put himself up into the race lead, because look behind and see that what was a small red dot is starting to get increasingly larger. That is Ian McGowan, and he is not going away anytime soon. In towards Stowe Corner we go. And again, to bring this point back up from earlier, though they do fight for the same team here, VSR Endurance and VSR Phoenix, these two drivers outside of today's context are rivals. It's a very uneasy alliance they find themselves in. They've got a lot of respect for each other, but there's going to come a point here. Someone's got to get their elbows out, because both of them are about to be at the mercy of Ian McGowan. Alan Alexander is too far away to provide any assistance at this time, so VSR do find themselves at a very uneasy impasse. The 89 might be waiting no longer. You can see he was looking for a way up the inside, but was denied it there. The 69 held at the inside. Wasn't looking to give any kind of room over to Tyler Vermack. Out through Aintree we go. This is getting to be rather hair-raising now. 1.3 seconds between himself and McGowan. In through Brooklands, come Luffield. Something's got to give here for the 69. The 89 will be trying to look away at the inside here at Luffield. This could be the start of a move for the race lead between Vermack and Van Veltzen on their way in towards Woodcote Corner. The Nissan will have the outside, slightly more momentum to carry. He'll be slingshotting it up to be side by side. V8 versus V6 down towards turn 1 at Copse. Who gives way first? It won't be Vermack. It won't be Van Veltzen. They're still side by side in full formation flight, damn near flat. In through Copse, Vermack falls back to second. Van Veltzen holds on to first. This has been drama all round as we head towards the closing 30 minutes of this race. Van Veltzen will not secede, not one bit here, as we head out through Chapel onto the hangar straight, still being pursued by a more than present Ian McGowan. This could be rather dicey for Tyler Vermack. On the straightaways, the Nissan is pulling away. The Mercedes, even with its older 6.3 litre unit, cannot keep pace with the VR38 under the bonnet of that Nissan. Moreover, it's leaving both of them in an uneasy spot as they spend a lot more time at each other's throats. It doesn't take an awful lot to put that McLaren now up side by side with him, as he is now under a second away. These three front to back are about 9/10 in all, first down to third. It's in these moments at Silverstone where really anything can and will happen, and it usually is by surprise. It's an explosive change in fate for so many. So we do watch this moment through our fingers in hopes that nothing goes awry for either party, because this is about to get very, very dicey. In through Aintree we go. See so much understeer for the Nissan there. He holds short of the apex. You can almost see it in the body language as well. We've got yellow flags out down at Stowe Corner for the number 26 car. In trouble. As for these three, it doesn't yet concern them. That's in Sector 2. We're heading back out of Sector 3 towards Sector 1. With traffic in the way there, that Scott Unsworth has to move out of the way for these three. That's the entire podium he very nearly held up in towards Copse Corner. Bear in mind that little moment of traffic has just given a moment's respite over to Cas van Velzen. What it has actually done is it's thrown Vermaak a little bit under the bus here because he's further away from the Nissan than the McLaren behind him is to him. It's a dangerous spot and it's shifted power away from him so quickly that he is no longer in that fight for third, but moreover in that fight for second. As Ian McGowan has caught up, we're going to try and catch on board with the McLaren as far as things are concerned right now, cutting away from Ferrari, BMW, and it does it by manufacturer. It's very bizarre. We do see here, fight Anderson v Friedman. Just briefly here, this is actually for 8th position, and they make their way in through Copse Corner, but we are looking for the McLaren of Ian McGowan. As we see here, this is in the fight for second. Number 64 pursuing the number 89. Vermaak defending. Van Velzen now far up the road. A very bizarre change in fate here on that podium fight. One curious thing noted by someone in our Twitch chat there, they've just been paying close attention to the behavior of the tyres on that number 89. Pressure loss for the rear right tyre for Tyler Vermaak. We're watching here with Ian McGowan. He's got clear line of sight over the rear of Tyler Vermaak's car, but we're a little too far away to see if anything is sagging there on the tyres for that Mercedes. We'll have to catch back on board with Vermaak, but he's saying the rear right, and actually, yeah, you can almost see, yeah, there you can. A little bit of a drastic change in body language. It's small, and to the uninitiated, it is a very small change, but it is a larger indicator of something seriously wrong with that car. Now, bear in mind, we must consider the context coming into this event. It was a case that Tyler Vermaak was constructing this setup from scratch. He's not had a lot of time to stress test this. This is, in fact, a live fire demonstration for that setup. So if there are to be issues with it now, this is where you're going to see it. And for Ian McGowan, he's going to be grinning ear to ear here in terms of that, because now he knows that the 89 is vulnerable. All he has to do is keep decent pace here, and it could be very well the case that that drops into his lap. The Mercedes clearly was something wrong. The Nissan, same story. McLaren, however, squeaky clean for the time being. In towards Stowe Corner we go. Just a little late on the brakes there, but you can see he's holding himself out just past the apex to give himself a little more momentum to Stowe. We do have another yellow flag out. It's the 186 in trouble. That's down at Village and the Loop. That's since cleared itself out. 27 minutes left to go here in Silverstone. We watch here with bated breath for the scope of things on the podium as we enter that last 30 minutes of racing. Let's stay on board with this fight for second as we take a look at the scope of things throughout the field. Things could be coming to a head in a moment's time here with a wounded and seemingly flagging Mercedes in trouble. Right now, as it stands, though, Cas van Velzen leads here in Silverstone. Vermaak second, and Ian McGowan in third place. Alan Alexander in fourth. Zen Vitus in fifth. Jan-Willem Bos in sixth, with Lee Evans in seventh. Will Friedman in eighth, and Declan Anderson in ninth. And rounding out the top 10 there, Matt Wright in the number 135 SimPlay Motorsport Ferrari. Burns in 11th, Watson in 12th place. Still very solid position for Lee Watson, all things considered. I would be putting that one up to a hazard there as to whether or not that's driver of the day material for Lee Watson when you consider what he's been able to do from the start of that race. 42nd, actually could even be, yes, no, it was 42nd. Started from the pit lane and is now made up 30 positions. That might be the most amount of positions we've ever seen a driver gain in any race ever. So I don't think there's many arguments in the way of not giving that one potentially over to Watson. Of course, plenty of things to consider, and I'll leave that up to the folks over at the Race Club UK Discord to definitively decide what driver of the day should constitute. But there's my pick. There's my 2 cents on the matter. I would be looking at the direction of that number 13. But now we're looking in the direction of the 64 and the 89. Looking up the inside there is Ian McGowan. Holds short of it, knows that he couldn't have made the gap without compromising himself and the 89. Bear in mind, one slip and they fall onto a tide of both SimPlay and VSR talent inside of that top 10. First among them would have been Alan Alexander, 7 seconds away from the fight for second on your screen at the moment. Large wad of traffic coming up as well. Robert Ogan, 17th there, just gives over to Van Veltzen. We'll have to give over to Vermaak and McGowan. You can see in the background that Porsche, the number 27. Easily recognizable sight there. That's Alan Alexander, the only Porsche in this race here at Silverstone. Got to hand it to him as well. He's doing all of that on controller, if I'm not mistaken, is still the case for him at this time. One of the most polarizing vehicles on the grid, the Porsche 911, and he's using a controller, and he's 4th. I mean, you got to respect it. It really does show that equipment isn't everything in sim racing. It does take serious driving tenacity to make the driver. Of course, equipment helps, but that's on a purely subjective level. The 87 with a drive-through penalty there for track limits violations. That was out through Cops on the run into Maggots and Beckett's for them on the map at the moment. So we see here a little bit of a run out through Luffield in towards Woodcote. Something is looking direly wrong here for Tyler Vermaak because Ian McGowan is right on top of him now. He's clung to him like a bad habit for the last 3 laps, and this could be his opportunity to strike as we head on to lap 47 out through Cops. Then into Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. Will he even consider his chances to go side by side? You can see it's incredibly close between the pair as they make their way into Maggots. Then comes Beckett's. Then comes Chapel. Out through Beckett's now. In towards Chapel. In the meantime, in our Twitch chat, we have Antonio Angeletta joining us, otherwise VSR Antion, for those of you who may know him through our coverage of VSR Phoenix. He's currently joining us from Australia. At the poolside, so I'm told. As we see here, encountering some lapped traffic. The Ferrari there, that's Foster. Almost caught himself in the crossfire between these two. It has given just a moment's respite back over to Vermaak. For the meantime, though, Van Veltzen, with that stealth pit stop, as far as you or I are concerned, is leading by 2.2 seconds. That's actually, it's 1.6 seconds. Sorry, the maths just isn't adding up for me. 1.6 seconds in subjective terms from first and second. From where we're looking at from McGowan's point of view, it was at 2.6 or 2.2. Again, maths, not a good thing. Didn't end up with good math skills, as it turns out. Something I would like to point out is that gap is withering just a little bit through the first, well, what would be the first sector is now the third sector, and through that first sector where cornering becomes priority, the Nissan is still struggling. So maybe the key to his success today for Cas Van Veltzen, he has potentially, and this would explain the sudden deterioration in any and all handling characteristics on that 69, he might have gone for just fuel. And that's what's given him a shorter pit stop time. It's what's kept him up the road from Vermaak. Of course, we'll ask him towards the end of this race. And the next time we ever do see some of the folks here from Race Club UK or from SimPlay Motorsports, we'll be sure to tell you that maybe that was the secret recipe for Van Veltzen's successes so far. But let's not call things too early. I think there is still plenty more to be discussed. Right now, chief among them is that fight for second place. These two we've been on with for some time, and we're waiting to see how it chooses to wrap up, if it wraps up at all. We do want to try and get a look around the rest of the field here. Bear in mind, 41 cars still left on this field, and we're still stuck in lasered to but 2 of them at the front of the pack. In towards Stowe Corner we go then. The 89 hangs out wide, more momentum to carry over there, but he's over the white lines. He can't be doing that too many times. As we already saw, that's caught a few drivers out. Also, the runoff out through Cops. That's what caught out earlier on the 80... not the 89, it was the 85. Out through Abbey. In through Farm, in towards Village. Now, double overtaking opportunity coming in here. 2 heavy braking zones. We see Vermaak runs it a little out wide there. He'll be vulnerable for the run in through the loop. So all McGowan has to do is try and get himself back onto the racing line. But because of that lap traffic in the way there, that was Nick Lamming in the number 87. Accidentally put a bit of a halt on either of their momentum on the exit of the loop, whilst both of them tried to figure out what was the course of action in a little under a second. Down through Brooklands into Luffield. The chances are absolutely there for these two. We'll just quickly have a look around the field. This is, of course, one of the closest fights we're seeing at the moment. There is another one. Rhys Gregory was briefly in a fight with John O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll now up to 18th. Gregory down to 19th. in terms of what the telemetry is showing us as well. Varga versus McNally, Nissan versus Jaguar, and it's contact there between the pair on the exit of Stowe. Ultimately, McNally advances and Varga drops a position. Back on then with Ian McGowan, 0.5 of a second. And now we're going to look on board with the defending point of view just briefly here. We're going to catch on board with Tyler Vermaak in second place right now. There's Van Veltzen, the leading car. We see Rob Smith navigating traffic there behind him, Lars Rammensberger. Let's go and catch on board with that Mercedes. That's who we're trying to find here. And it is a very, very tense situation so far for Tyler Vermaak. Back into that fight for second. He's on an experimental setup in a car he's not 100% all that there with. It's not a car that we often see him drive for. Of course, a lot of transferable skill from some of the cars he's previously driven with. I think one of the closest comparators that spring to mind was his brief-lived stint with Aston Martin. Of course, another coupe, longer front end, almost a front mid-engine where it's just tucked in a little behind that front axle in towards the cockpit, so it gives it just a slightly better center of rotation. One moment as well, yellow flags out for the number 3. That's through Vale and Club, and that's since got back going. 19 minutes left to go. You can see just how far in they want to push that engine and transmission. It's so much so that it's almost created a sort of wall between what would be the driver and passenger seat. In even more extreme cases on cars like the Bentley Continental, but what it does give the Mercedes is just a little bit more agility. Now, it will never have as much agility as the car right behind it, the McLaren, where the engine sits behind the cockpit in the middle. See the Nissan skipping the curbs there a little bit. That was the number 69, Kat Van Veltzen. Bear in mind as well, the number 4 had a momentary rolling white flag, but that has since cleared itself out, so nothing as yet to investigate there. That was on the exit of Chapel, down the opening half of the hangar straight. In the meantime, we're still in that fight for second, and it almost came to a head there when we were on board with Vermaak hanging over his rear. We was forced to readjust his course there through hangar. Is Ian McGowan with McLaren heading down in towards Vale and Club. So we'll cut away from Vermaak to go and catch on board with McGowan in third place at the moment in this fight for second. As here comes again those two overtaking opportunities. He's got a much better look of it this time around, but you can see how late on the brakes the number 89 is willing to go. Now in through the loop, he's got a slightly better run of things than what we saw in the last couple of laps there. Back to business, as it were, for Tyler Vermaak. It is very, very close here. Bear in mind, this is the gateway for Ian McGowan to have a charge back up towards the lead of this race, but he's got to clear what is quite a sizable obstacle, and seemingly by fate here, things have come up rather nicely for Cas Van Veltzen, where he was originally about to be intercepted by his teammate. Tyler Vermaak is now inadvertently defending his lead of the race, and a big step out for the Mercedes, mind you, in through Luffield, is now putting an even bigger gap over these two and the leading Nissan. So it is very bizarre, and I'm not sure all the gears in this great machine are turning the right way, but what it has given us is definitely an uneasy set of circumstances and fantastic viewing from the podium as we make our way into Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. 16 minutes, 20 seconds left to go. That's functionally looking in and around the margin for, say, about 7 or 8 laps here in Silverstone before the checkered flag. So you see, this was the area where he very nearly intercepted Vermaak on the last lap, just gone down the hangar, but he's much further away this time. He was practically pushing the Mercedes in towards Stowe Corner. Not this time around for McGowan. The exit of Stowe, could he be vying his chances in towards Vale and Club? You could definitely make the argument for it. He was looking centre mass of the road, trying to get inside the 89's head, saying, if you keep leaving the gaps open, I will be there. You're under... Oh, never mind. The 64 over-rotates is one of several victims of that area of the track, and that's come at the worst possible time here for Ian McGowan. Get a look at this on the replay. This is on the exit of Vale and Club corner. Now, this has been an issue for so many drivers throughout today's race. This has come at the worst time, so it's those curbs there. It creates this momentary loss of grip for the drivers. It's a lot more aggressive than it appears. It's a very flat-looking curb in the game. In real life, it's quite deeply serrated. But what that has done for the number 64 is definitely not done him a lot of help. He's now 2.8 seconds from Vermaak, and that could be the nail in the coffin for McGowan's efforts to try and retake the race lead. The defence there by Vermaak, that should be studied, because that was quite something there, properly pushing the car to the ragged edge. Not that I think he wanted to do that. His real sights have been set the whole time on that leading Nissan. Van Veltsen up in front of him. And where the charts seem to be having a little bit of a moment, they're saying that that was in fact the fight for fourth. No, that you can see there at updates is still that fight for first place. All three of these drivers have been pushing their cars right to the ragged edge. So this open-ended strategy has given us quite a lot to talk about in the closing quarter hour of racing. Taking a look then on the grander scheme as things start to simmer down just a touch on that top three. Cas Van Veltsen leads with Nissan, Tyler Vermaak second. Ian McGowan drops down further in third than he'd like to be. That does open the gaps a little bit between himself and Alan Alexander in fourth place. Zen Vitus in fifth. Jan Villenbos in sixth. Lee Evans in seventh. Will Friedman in eighth. And Declan Anderson in ninth. Rounding out the top 10, not too far behind at all, there is Matt Wright, but he's caught up behind two cars. Among them, by looks of it, there looks to be John O'Driscoll. Those bright red wheels on that Ferrari, I believe that is the calling card there for O'Driscoll. Meanwhile, we do have yellow flags, I believe it, for the number 10 cars. That's trouble for Rammensberger. As we see here, this is over in the loop on the run in towards Aintree in what is now Sector 3, would have been Sector 1. Out through Aintree he goes then. Drops position out to Harris. Tucks back into a whole swarm of cars up in front of him there. They're back into green flag conditions for the time being. Also, just quickly to note as well, this was the fight going on up in front of him. Spike Hart and Ben Godden, 30th place up for grabs. Rob Smith momentarily was in a fight with Fireblade. That's since resolved itself. The Nissan up to 24th. The McLaren drops down to 25th and right onto the Ironsides of Sean McNally. Just quickly observing those gaps again in that top three. It can change in a moment's notice. We are practically looking at it here at DEFCON 1 for that situation. As we see now, 47 up and around. That's a Fireblade in the 56. A little spot of bother as he gathers some grass on his left-hand side on the run in towards Stowe. Very nearly gave him an early holiday to the gravel pit. Two Nissans look to go head-to-head here. Rob Smith versus Sean McNally. In the meantime, we're seeing a driver drop positions out. I'm not sure who it was at this time. We are seeing shifts inside of that top 20. Clements half a second from Adnall, so there could be a fight for 20th place coming up here. Chris Clements and Michael Adnall, 36 and 15, both of them for the Race Club UK team. Quickly looking at the civil war of the Nissans. So we see here McNally versus Smith. And have a look at that there, Robert Smith and Rob Smith in the same span of the track here, 23rd and 24th. Meanwhile, that fight, Clements v Adnall, has just come to a head there. Out through Copse Corner, the Ferrari retakes 20th. Over Michael Adnall in the 36. 11 minutes left to go. Friedman in pursuit here of Evans. This could be for 7th place up for grabs, so let's take a look with these two through Stowe Corner. It's a great comeback drive for Friedman. That stop-go 30 put a huge hamper on his chances to win here in Silverstone. He had a dominant opening part of this race. But after that stop-go 30, that was the nail in the coffin. That the best of times, he could be looking within a chance here of 7th place. And it sits right there in front of him. Currently being held on to by the 44 Nissan. out through Abbey. Now again, we've seen things get properly hairy here in through the village and loop section in the arena. Now heading out through the loop, you can see holding things much further out to the right to give himself more send as he makes his way swinging around left through the loop. And all of this is in efforts to build as much momentum as possible, carrying out through Aintree for the run down the Wellington Straight. Now we know Ford's got straight line speed, but Nissan has proven under at least these BOP restrictions that they are capable of challenging the Blue Oval here in Silverstone. The question therein remains, with more grip to his aid, as the 208 got chances here to get around Evans by the end of this lap. He is sizing things up through Luffield. He might have to wait at least one more. He comes into the last 10 minutes of racing here in Silverstone. Out through Woodcote, coming down towards Copse Corner. Valiant defence so far by Evans, but it's a case of when, not if, the 208 will find his way up and alongside. We see already carrying the most amount of pace of any driver on this track. Fastest lap still held this far into a 2-hour race by Will Friedman in the 208 Mustang. While VSR look at the chances to win here in Silverstone, SimPlay will not be walking away empty-handed. They've had a great performance as of so far. And those two teams still comprise the entirety of that top 10. I think we're about to see a move here for 7th. Heading down the hangar. Very dicey exit for Chapel from both of them. Very nearly made contact on their way down towards Stowe Corner. Earlier onto the brakes, but by a fraction of a second there, I think, was the 44 of Evans over Friedman. These two properly getting elbows out here. Something has got to give between Nissan and Ford down towards Vale and Club Corner. Now we're going to have to cut away from that because we are about to see action here in the fight for second place, as things have gone all manner of pear-shaped for Tyler Vermack. He does drop out through Aintree, in through to Brooklands, come Luffield. The 89 falls in behind Ian McGowan. So a huge turn of events there for Tyler Vermack. We caught just the trailing end of it. We saw the telemetry spike down there violently against the Mercedes, as now it drops to 3rd, and it puts Ian McGowan up to 2nd with clear line of sight in the last 8 minutes, functionally looking at the advent of about 4 laps, maybe 5 before the end of this race, to catch Cas van Veltzen. The demands are clear and now on the table. Contact between them right before you cut to them. So there was contact out through Aintree or out through the loop. I mean, hence why the flashing there. Tyler Vermack is clearly not pleased with whatever did happen. Now out through Chapel, you can clearly see the line of sight almost at level pegging here between these three now. About 2 to 3, perhaps even 4 car lengths. I mean, maybe 5 cars or maybe 4 very long cars. I mean, at this point, you can see the gaps are getting closer. Out through Stowe, in towards Vale and Club. So we'll cut away then from what was the fight for seconds. We caught it right at the flashpoint of their rivalry on track between McGowan and Vermack. We now catch back on board this fight for 7th place going on between Will Friedman and Lee Evans. Frayed emotions there amongst VSR and SimPlay, and the war rages on further down the line inside of that top 10 between these two here. Ford versus Nissan, and what's been a very, very effective defense game so far for Evans in this latter portion of the race. He's been able to put himself in the right kind of place on track. He's been doing good area denial, really not put much of foot wrong so far. We know Friedman has the pace, but what he lacks at the moment is the available area to attack. The Nissan, for the first time, has the upper hand for straight line speed. Ford find themselves very rarely put in this position, and down the Wellington and Hangar straights, he has to commit himself to the slipstream. He can't afford to stop putting himself side by side, so really the chances to overtake on the straightaways are solely dependent at this time to dive bombing, which is not something Friedman often is cited doing. He doesn't like sporadic moves. He'll only take a move when he knows he can land it. We see this same mentality from a lot of experienced drivers, and this hesitation gets preyed upon in situations like these. And after a bit of an uneasy run through Sector 3, that gap is opening, and the battle of 7th is slowly dying. Looking back up to the podium very quickly as we see things are still sub-second, and at the last interval reported 8/10. I would definitely say, looking at that gap, it is a much closer affair between McGowan and Van Veltzen. We catch back on board with Tyler Vermack, but we're going to cut back across to McGowan. In second place, as you can see, it is half that reported distance at 0.4 of a second down towards Stowe. The chances are now still on the table for SimPlay Racing to win here in Silverstone in the closing 6 minutes of the 2 hours of Silverstone. There's been 3 leagues in contention. It's a 2-horse race now in the closing chapter. Where will this one land for Ian McGowan against Cas van Velzen? This is quite the lineup indeed. A whole swarm of cars up in front of them there on various different lengths of their races. And a wad of traffic that not many race leaders want to run into headstrong, and you can see things have started to peel back for the number 69 as he finds himself nearly side by side. He is side by side now with Ian McGowan. Now looking up the inside in towards the loop. He covers that one off, forces McGowan to run him around the outside. It'll be another late apex in the eyes here for the number 64, but he just can't hack it because of the way this corner is shaped, just too far apart between the 2 apexes to justify that much momentum carry. A big incident up in front of them with all of those lapped cars. Something awry happened up the order, and I think we're about to see the aftermath of it from the point of view of the 2 race leaders. Bear in mind, any one slip up from these 2 in the same way it was not too long ago for McGowan, it could play very nicely into the hands of Vermaak. You can see him downrange there. He's lost quite a bit of time, nearly out by 2 seconds. Caught in between there, Pedro Barros, one of the early casualties of today's race. You've got to hand it to these drivers. In a 2-hour race with an incident that large, you'd expect quite a few people to drop out, but it's best foot forward between these 3 leagues. And I'm delighted to say, I think in the span of all the things considered in today's race, we've only lost 1 driver. We started with 42 vehicles, we're down to 41. All of these drivers have stayed out. You see, running into traffic here. This is not good for Van Velzen. It's put a huge damper on what little gap remained of his current time. Parks himself on the right-hand side, knowing that McGowan can't move to the right. It's cheeky, not illegal, but very cheeky. Out through Stowe. This could move at a moment's notice here. It's so close between these 2. They've been so well matched in the last 10 minutes. You've got to hand it to McGowan here. It was not easy. He was up against a 2-pronged defensive from VSR. Moreover, just as you saw, there was another stab of oversteer. There was a much more violent one for him not too long ago. We take a look back to the instant replay. I'm pretty sure we still have that incident. This was a few laps ago on lap 51. We're 6 laps after that now on lap 57. This was the incident for the 64 earlier on. This was in his efforts to overtake Tyler Vermaak. Ultimately, he was able to quite quickly recover from that. So we see there coming into the loop. Now we're on to more lap traffic. That's the 35 of Ryan Auld. It has put just a little buffer there, half a second for Van Velzen v McGowan. 3 minutes left to go. We are still on the advent of 2 more laps of racing before the checkered flag flies here in Silverstone, and it can go any which way between SimPlay and VSR. Into the pit lane goes Auld. Vermaak giving the green light here. He's 2 seconds away. The road's clear out in front of him. But he can only watch and wonder from a distance what might happen in this fight for first place. Getting on board with that leading Nissan. We want to see things from the eyes of the race leader here as we're coming up on to the final couple of laps here. We're on the penultimate lap, lap 58 here in Silverstone. And that is a daunting sight. The fight for 29th going on up the road. Perslow v Varga, BMW versus Jaguar. They're side by side on the run in towards Stowe. If they trip over, these 2 will be the first to know about it. Heading in towards Stowe corner. You can see there unlapping himself. Actually, sorry, lapping past them is Matthew Duffin. So now you see there Varga getting in on this. Meanwhile, it's nearly side by side action there for McGowan and Van Velzen. In towards Vale and Club Corner. This is a very uneasy position for these 2 to find themselves in. Again, it's almost routine there on every lap that there's a little stab of oversteer. This is the capitalizing point for Cas van Velzen. If he finds himself behind coming into this next lap, that is his one striking spot on the exit of Vale and Club Corner. Down towards Village and the loop. Again, they'll be like navigating lapped traffic here. So this could make things a lot easier or a lot harder for these 2. And you can see locking there over the front axle for the number 69. He is pushing that Nissan absolutely right up to the ragged edge here. I don't actually... Yes, no, never mind. This is the, I think, second time we could see Nissan win a race outright in an endurance format. First time ever was by Anton Pohl back in the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship. But as we head on to the final lap here, we're still watching with Cas van Velzen and Ian McGowan. It is still up in the air as to who can take the crown here in this 1v1v1, League v League v League, VSR v Race Club UK v SimPlay Motorsport 2 Hours of Silverstone. This interleague series has kicked off with a bang, and it could end with 1-2. The 69 and the 64 still do battle here in the genesis of Formula 1, right here at the Grand Prix Circuit Silverstone. Down to Maggots, Beckett and Chapel. We'll stay on board with these two for the full duration of this lap. On board at the moment with the race leader. Watching from behind him there, you see, is the challenger to the throne here. Ian McGowan, the man who started from pole position, is but meters away from redemption. Heading down the hangar straight, still in pursuit. Those 4 rings on the back of that Nissan will be burned into his retinas by the end of today's race, unless he can clear himself of the Nissan. Both of them run a little bit out wide, out through Stowe, in towards Vale and Club Corner. The 64 and the 69 hell for leather in towards Vale. Now comes Club Corner, an area that has caught the 64 out many a time in today's race. It does not on this lap, and it's all or nothing for these two. They head up toward the Hamilton straight on the exit of Club. Coming up now on lap traffic, the 55 of Duffin. This is a dangerous, dangerous spot for Van Velzen. He's coming up into a double overtaking spot, and here we can see looking his way for the inside. McGowan can't find it the first time around. Duffin could really put a hamper on this one inadvertently, coming in towards the loop. He holds short of it. You can see there, Duffin held centre mass of the road. Not many places he can go in a situation like this. Heading down towards Aintree. The 69 inadvertently has been done a solid there. Yellow flags out behind for the 186, hanging out past the loop. This could be the deciding factor for Cas van Velzen. Heading down towards Brooklands, coming to Luffield. Duffin still side by side. The 55 hangs dangerously close to the 69, heading in towards Luffield. Dangerously close indeed. Out through Luffield, it has been down to the wire between McGowan and Van Velzen, but against the odds on the stealthiest of strategies known to man in the 2 Hours of Silverstone, it's Cas van Velzen to win in Silverstone. A valiant, valiant drive indeed by the 69 Nissan VSR, winning the Interleague here in Silverstone, courtesy of Cas van Velzen of Euro Titans Endurance. What an ending to this race indeed. And what a drive. Steady on there, Van Velzen. What a drive indeed by Cas van Velzen. Honourable drive there as well for McGowan. He really put his heart and soul into that drive today. We'll get the full results out as McGowan has quickly left the scene. Now, we do try to advise. Admittedly, we can't do much in terms of administrative choices. That's up to the league to decide. But we always do recommend in any league we cover, as sort of a discretionary from us, don't do that. Because it might mess up the results as well. But we'll wait to see the full results roll in due course. But what a drive there. VSR take the first position and the third. A double podium for VSR with Vermaak in third. A brilliant, brilliant drive by Cas van Velzen. So it was an undercut strategy. We finally got to piece together what that was. We thought it originally that he was going for a longer form overcut and it would have been Vermaak to lead. But no, it was a super early undercut that put the Nissan up in the competitive stead that it was, and then it was all technique from there on out for Cas van Velzen to give him the edge over not only his teammates at the VSR team, but over his rivals at SimPlay. But what a drive there, cunning by the 69. We'll wait to see what the final results are saying. McGowan rejoins the session to confirm second place there with SimPlay. Meanwhile, Tyler Vermaak has now left the scene as well, but as far as you or I are concerned, he was third. Otherwise, I don't think Alan Alexander will be arguing with where he stands. That puts him up to third. We'll see the full results, of course. The bottom line, though, your winner for this race, Cas van Velzen. A fantastic little event then to bring us to the final race of 2025. Van Velzen wins in Silverstone for VSR Endurance. McGowan second, Vermaak third, Alexander fourth, Vitas fifth, Boss sixth, Friedman seventh, Evans eighth, Anderson in ninth, and Wright in 10th. Then looking further down the order from 11th to 20th, Burns, Watson, Oates, Duffin, Cheetos, Foster, Ogan, O'Driscoll, Clements and Gregory. Then from 21st to 30th, Adnall, Cardno, Robert Smith, McNally, Rob Smith, Betterson, Godden, Blade, Perslow and Varga. Then from 31st to last, Hart, Lamming, Unsworth, Barrett, Harris, Barros, Hall, Bernie, Old, Rammensberger, and Sherry Moore. 3 DNFs in this race, as it turned out. Harley Butcher, Matthias Claes, and Chris Davies. What a result, though. Very, very well done to our drivers today from all 3 of these leagues. A valiant performance there. Furthest up the order for the SimPlay team, Ian McGowan second. Furthest up the order for Race Club UK, James Burns in 11th. Furthest up the order then for the winning team, VSR's Cas van Veltzen. Well, that was definitely quite something. And since we're at the end of the road here for 2025, what a year it has been here on TRTN. I really do want to thank, first of all of our fans in the Twitch chat, everyone who's subbed, everyone who's ever commented, who's ever interacted with this, shared a link, what have you. Anyone who has ever helped put TRTN on the map in this community, we do owe the greatest of thanks to you, the viewer. We'd also like to thank all of our sponsors and all of our clients as well. That includes an extensive list of everyone who's worked with us over the course of 2025. I really cannot begin to express my gratitude as an individual. When I started 2025, I was in a very, very bad spot. And coming back to the end of this year now, looking up towards the future, I think being able to get into sports commentary and to do what it is that I do has been a great, great lifter for me. And to have so many people back me up along the way. I've got my own team here at TRTN with my friends helping me out with this from behind the scenes. I've got clients helping me coordinate in terms of scripts, in terms of what to know about the drivers. It's really been quite an uplifting journey, and with any hopes now that we can continue to keep the ball rolling into 2026. But what a way to cap off 2025, folks. What a race, and what a place to end it. It was a fantastic year for us here on TRTN. Of course, at the time of recording, it is the 30th of December 2025 at 10:35 p.m. and it's just ticked over there. Tomorrow, of course, is New Year's Eve, and then we're on to the advent of 2026, but we'll be back in the saddle this coming weekend for the 3rd and the 4th for rounds out of HCCL, Competizione Performance League, and the NLRL not console endurance series, the Sunday League. Well, what a year it's been, and what a race it's been. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care, and good night.